Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Since being rescued in the alley that night, Chen Yan's life has been completely changed. He quit his job, sold off his unnecessary belongings, and with an almost pilgrimage-like fervor, boarded a train to the melting city. The scattered, vague accounts on the internet that subtly resonated with his experience that night. Almost all of them pointed to the city where a mass evacuation had occurred, but which suddenly canceled the mass evacuation and returned to normal. He firmly believed that it was a place closer to the Lord and a promised land where he could find more of his kind. In Melting City, he rented a nearly deserted basement apartment in an old neighborhood. The room was damp and dark, with only a small window facing a narrow gap between buildings, rarely seeing sunlight. But in Chen Yan's view, this environment was perfectly suited to the Lord's realm of shadow and silence. He turned this place into his own sanctuary. He painted the entire wall himself with cheap black paint, then covered it with white chalk and silver marker. He was drawing that distorted holy emblem that he imagined and constantly modified, a fusion of shadows, tentacles, a gigantic mouth, and his understanding of the concepts of devouring and end. The pattern covered an entire wall, appearing particularly eerie in the dim light. The room was filled with all sorts of books I'd found at secondhand bookstores and online. Mysticism, folklore, psychopathology, and even popular science books on high-energy physics. He tried to find clues to understand the Lord from every possible field, and his notebook was filled with wildly jumping associations and inferences. His daily routine, without fail, consisted of gazing at the wall of holy emblems for extended periods. He recited in a low voice a prayer he had composed himself, filled with obscure vocabulary and a sense of awe. He firmly believed that he was special, the only listener and recorder of God on earth. Through the hidden corners of the internet, he cautiously disseminated vague information about the Lord of Shadow devouring. In order to avoid being detected by the authorities, he deliberately avoided making direct appeals to the faith. Instead, it describes the feeling of being watched by a grand presence and the eerie scene of being swallowed up by shadow activation from the perspective of researchers and those who experienced it firsthand. His goal was clear: to find those who had experienced the City of Melting incident, who could sense the abnormality, and who could hear the whispers of the Lord. His search was not in vain. He found 3 people. Li Sha, in a moment when the furnace core went out of control, sensed the presence of someone. This caused her to suffer from chronic insomnia, and she always said that she could feel that there were eyes in the sky. Chen Yan's description of the shadow precisely struck at her deepest fears and confusion. She wanted to know what it was. Wang Tao is a taciturn construction worker. In the chaos before the evacuation, he stayed in the core area in search of his missing coworkers. He seemed to see something, yet he also seemed to see nothing. Upon returning, he developed a strange sense of both affinity and fear towards dark environments. The shadow and devouring mentioned by Chen Yan gave him hope of finding the answer to his own problem. Zhao Ming is a student from Rongcheng, studying philosophy at a local university. The evacuation incident instilled in him a deep skepticism about the reality of the world, leading him to become obsessed with various fringe theories and supernatural phenomena, attempting to find explanations. Chen Yan's resolute and fervent demeanor, as well as the indescribable greatness he mentioned in his words, deeply attracted him. On a weekend night, these 3 listeners, selected and contacted by Chen Yan, were identified as potential listeners capable of hearing the whispers. With their own purposes, they stepped into that semi-basement sanctuary, filled with the smell of ink and mildew. Including Chen Yan, the 4 of them sat around the only clean carpet in the center of the room, with 2 stools beside them. It was clearly not enough for all 4 of them, and the atmosphere was both tense and excited. Welcome to the first gathering of the Sound of Silence. Chen Yan tried to make his voice sound calm and authoritative as he pointed to the huge, unsettling holy emblem on the wall. This is the revelation from our Lord, the devourer who wields shadow and end, granting us a glimpse of his majesty. Li Sha stared intently at the pattern, an unnatural blush rising on her pale face. She murmured, "It's moving. I think I can hear it talking to me." College student Zhao Ming adjusted his glasses, took out a voice recorder and notebook, adopting a serious, investigative stance. "Mr. Chen Yan, you claim to have established contact with this being. Could you please provide details about the specific environmental parameters at the time the contact was established, your mental state, and whether you subsequently received any verifiable information or instructions. Chen Yan took a deep breath and began to recount his experience that night, naturally adding a great deal of artistic embellishment and self-aggrandizement. He described how the Lord bestowed grace upon him in his most desperate moment, emphasizing the importance of devout prayer and spirituality. He then displayed a set of prayers he had compiled himself, which were difficult to understand and full of metaphors. All we can do right now is express our piety and faith to the Lord. Chen Yan concluded, his gaze sweeping over the other three. Through meditation and reciting prayers, let our spiritual frequency draw closer to the realm of the Lord. Perhaps we could try a collective prayer ceremony, gathering our faith and offering our reverence and supplications to the Lord. This suggestion terrified Li Sha but ignited a flame in the eyes of Wang Tao and Zhao Ming. A prayer? Do we need offerings? Like in mythology, Zhao Ming pressed, his tone filled with the excitement of an academic inquiry. No. The Lord needs no worldly things. Chen Yan categorically denied, recalling the eerie efficiency and purity of the shadow devouring that night. What the Lord favors is the connection established between us, the perceivers. What we need to offer is our purest belief. So without any offerings, they gathered around a small copper plate that Chen Yan had found at a flea market, which he claimed had the power to gather energy. The four sat in a circle, and led by Chen Yan, began to recite the difficult-to-pronounce prayer in hushed tones. The dim light seemed to flicker even more, and the shadows in the room seemed to come alive, wriggling slightly on the irregular walls. The temperature dropped subtly and an indescribable sense of oppression spread. Li Sha began to sob softly. Wang Tao seemed to hear something, while Zhao Ming excitedly watched the pointer jumping on the simple electromagnetic field detector he had brought. Something's coming. Chen Yan closed his eyes, concentrating intently, trying to capture the vast, star-studded gaze he had felt that night. As a listener, he attempted to echo once again. However, their ritual, based on erroneous perceptions and far-fetched interpretations, failed to attract the deities they hoped for. On the contrary, they have come together now because of the uniqueness of their souls. This attracted some low-level weirdos who wandered in the cracks of reality, drawn by this spiritual energy. Just as Chen Yan felt his consciousness was about to touch some vague threshold. Smack! The already dim incandescent light bulb overhead flickered for a moment before going out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Only the faint light from the distant streetlights outside the window could barely outline the objects. Immediately afterwards, on the wall where the holy emblem was drawn, some of the chalk lines seemed to have been wiped away by an invisible hand, instantly becoming blurred, as if merging into a deeper darkness. A chilling aura, carrying a distinctly malicious intent, surged from every corner of the room like a tidal wave, choking everyone's breath. Ah! Li Sha let out a shrill scream, pointing to the small window, where a large number of murky water droplets had condensed on the glass. They are rapidly converging and flowing, forming several distorted, pained, as if silently screaming human faces pressed tightly against the glass, peering inward. It's them, they're here. Lisa collapsed, clutching her head in despair. Wang Tao stood up, picked up the stool from the ground, and assumed a fighting stance. Zhao Ming's face was deathly pale, his breathing rapid, but his fingers flew across the paper in the darkness, making notes. We did it. We did it. Although he didn't know what he had attracted, Chen Yan's heart was pounding in his chest, a mixture of immense fear and a twisted excitement at the approach of achieving his goal. He forced his trembling legs to support him, facing the window filled with faces of suffering, and with all his remaining strength, he raised the volume of his prayer once more. Great Lord of shadows and devourers of the end, your humble servant beseeches you. Descend your power, purify this impurity, and shelter your faithful. However, in the darkness, only the growing malice remained. The outline of the face on the glass became clearer and clearer, and it even began to strike the windowpane with an invisible force, making a teeth-grinding, creaking sound. Their first collective prayer failed to summon the gods, but instead opened a corner of Pandora's box. The air in the basement seemed to freeze. The distorted human faces condensed by water vapor on the window became increasingly clear. Water droplets wrapped around each person's neck, making it difficult for them to breathe, as if they were drowning. Chen Yan was still futilely chanting his self-composed prayer aloud. Li Sha huddled in the corner, sobbing, while the stool in Wang Tao's hand seemed to serve no purpose. Zhao Ming's face turned deathly pale, yet he stubbornly continued to record the unimaginably terrifying scene before him. Just as the glass, covered with the outlines of pained faces, creaked under the strain, as if it were about to shatter at any moment. Bangs! With a dull thud, the not-so-sturdy wooden door to the basement was violently flung open from the outside. Several figures dressed in black combat uniforms, moving with the speed of cheetahs, surged in instantly. They were not armed with conventional firearms, but rather with strangely shaped firearms that emitted a low-temperature white vapor. There were no warnings, no announcements. The leader's sharp gaze swept across the room, instantly locking onto the unusual sight at the window. He raised his hand, and a stream of extremely cold white liquid shot out from the muzzle of the futuristic-looking freezing gun. A bone-chilling cold instantly enveloped the entire window. Those twisted, writhing watermark faces were frozen almost instantly upon contact with the cold air, retaining their final grotesque postures, solidified within the thick layer of ice, and even the surrounding glass was covered with a thick layer of white frost. The chilling, sticky, and malicious aura seemed to have its source cut off, and it suddenly weakened. Almost simultaneously, two other team members skillfully stepped forward and aimed a specially made metal box that shimmered with a faint blue light at the frozen window. As the blue light swept across, the thick layer of ice containing the frozen human face was completely cut off and precisely sucked into the box. With a click, the doors closed and all abnormal fluctuations vanished instantly. From breaking down the door to containment, the entire process took no more than 10 seconds. Efficient, calm, and professional, they possessed a ruthless power belonging to the state apparatus that was completely different from the clumsy rituals performed by Chen Yan and his team. Class C Anomaly number 1052, water droplets outside the window, has been contained. Chen Yan and his three companions were completely stunned. They collapsed to the ground, staring blankly at the men in black who seemed to have fallen from the sky. A chill ran through them. It was all over. Their unauthorized gathering and worship of an evil god, even if it was just their imagination, had attracted real supernatural forces. They were sure to be arrested, and their fate was predictable. Especially Chen Yan, wouldn't he be dissected? Know that you are the echo of the Lord and the recorder of the great Lord. Such importance necessitates a slice-by-slice study to do justice to his status. I won't say anything. Chen Yan closed his eyes like a true believer. He wanted to offer his blood and flesh to his Lord just like Jesus. However, the expected shackles and harsh reprimands did not come. One of the team members stepped forward and gave Chen Yan a puzzled look. The scanner quickly scanned the four people, lingering for a moment, especially on the eerie wall drawn by Chen Yan. Vital signs are stable, but the individual has experienced moderate shock and there are traces of low-level contamination. The team member calmly reported, then looked at the four men, his tone flat and devoid of any emotion. Come out with us and answer our questions. The four were led out of the basement with trepidation and into a black van outside that had no markings. The questioning process was much simpler than they had imagined, mainly focusing on how they gathered, the details of the ritual, and their personal experiences with the abnormal. The people asking the questions didn't seem particularly interested in their beliefs themselves. They were more interested in recording the information. A few hours later, they were told they could leave, but were sternly warned against engaging in such dangerous gatherings and rituals again. Standing at the entrance of the familiar yet seemingly alien neighborhood, the four looked at each other, all feeling a sense of unreal absurdity. They just let us go like that? Li Sha's voice was still trembling. Otherwise what? Perhaps our little bit of faith is nothing more than a joke in their eyes. Zhao Ming pushed up his glasses and smiled wryly. The fervent notes in his notebook now seemed so pale. Wang Tao remained silent. Chen Yan felt a mix of emotions. The official response made him feel it even more acutely. The being he was trying to reach was far beyond the comprehension of ordinary mortals like themselves. Even the Huxia government seemed to consider it a joke, which is why they released them, but he would never give up. The Lord is watching over me. Longmian Command Center. Zhang Zhengxing looked at the full report on the screen about Chen Yan and his three associates and their so-called silent voice society, his fingers lightly tapping the table. If the special forces hadn't been keeping a close eye on Chen Yan, something really might have happened. Chen Yan is one thing, but the other three are clearly afraid of the melting city incident, afraid of the bizarre. Coupled with misinterpretations and blind worship of the unknown, he concluded. The fact that they can attract water droplets from outside the window shows that they do indeed possess a certain faint, attractive quality. Or rather, they are themselves small, abnormal beacons. Unexpectedly, are all of his followers this kind of person, or is this some kind of rule? He pondered for a moment, then said to Lin Wei inside the holographic projection, "Give Zhongshan a brief report on the whole story." The key point is that these individuals attempted to establish a faith, which led to some low-level, bizarre occurrences. Let's hear his perspective. Since the cooperation has already gone this far, there's no need to hide it anymore. As the person in charge, facing the Dragon Sleep project head-on, Zhang Zhengxing was probably the third person to understand the immense existence of he. He is absolutely not to be angered. Communicating more won't hurt, why keep it to yourself? Can you even beat them? Lin Wei nodded, closed her eyes, concentrated, and tried to connect with the deep darkness. Deep within Zhongshan Mountain, amidst endless shadows and stillness, Lin Yi's consciousness flickered slightly. The message Lin Wei conveyed was like a speck of dust thrown into a deep pool. Believers. Worship. A detached thought echoed, carrying a hint of barely perceptible boredom. Lin Wei interprets it as no need, nor does it matter. Whether it exists or not, it neither increases nor decreases. He has no interest in the fantasies and actions of these insignificant beings. Believers are to him. It is neither necessary nor a burden, but merely an insignificant background noise. Just like ants in front of the door, it's fine if they're there, and it's also fine if they're not. However, just as this thought was about to fade away, another thought based on his instinctive hunger quietly emerged. Can they attract food? Although it only attracted low-quality and insignificant snacks, the phenomenon itself aroused a sense of curiosity. And what about yourself? This sudden thought awakened Lin Yi's superficial consciousness, and a stronger ripple began to spread outwards. If these insignificant humans, with their flawed rituals and weak beliefs, can lure unsuspecting fish like bait, so as a predator, if it actively emitted some kind of aura, would it be able to attract larger, more palatable, and more numerous prey? He is thinking. He wanted to go fishing to be a fisherman. Lin Yi, whose consciousness had just awakened, pondered further. Will you be in the Air Force? Deep within Zhongshan Mountain lies the core of that vassal land, which has already taken the form of an independent divine kingdom. Lin Yi floated in the gap between reality and illusion, his enormous body resembling a slowly pulsating living nebula composed of shadows, tentacles, and indescribable organs. How could those insignificant humans summon such base and bizarre phenomena through rudimentary and flawed rituals? It wasn't that the ritual itself was particularly effective, but rather that in their extreme focus and fervor, their souls emitted a special, subtle fluctuation. This kind of fluctuation is significant for the low-level weirdos who wander in the cracks of reality and act on instinct. Like a candle flickering in the darkness, it is full of the allure of being attached to and corrupted. A spontaneous experiment, an attempt driven by curiosity based on the instinct of hunger. He began to mobilize his vast star-like spiritual power, not by rudely unleashing pressure, but by exquisitely refining and reversing the attraction fluctuations originating from the souls of tiny beings. However, released through his indescribable form, this fluctuation was no longer a faint candle flame, but was instantly amplified and strengthened billions of times, transforming into a silent yet powerful tide of souls. This unusual wave, disregarding physical distance, centered on Zhongshan Mountain, swept across much of Daxia in an instant, like a circular wave stirred up by a boulder thrown into a calm lake, in a way that defied conventional physical laws. This fluctuation contains not only the primary attraction of there is a target to attach to here. It also incorporates Lin Yi's understanding of the ultimate, which is destiny. For those weak and eerie creatures, this is no longer a simple food signal, but rather an irresistible ultimate call from the very source of life. A complex signal that can only be clearly perceived by beings of the mysterious kind, a mixture of destination, common origin, purification, and supreme existence. This is an irresistible bait. The first to notice the anomaly were the paranormal monitoring network set up by the Bureau of Paranormal Affairs around Zhongshan, and even covering most of Daxia. The piercing alarms blared almost simultaneously throughout the monitoring centers. Report: the paranormal energy readings across the entire area have spiked abnormally. It's not a single source, it's it's countless. There are reactions from all directions. The energy levels are generally not high, but the numbers. My God, the numbers are increasing rapidly. Their target is perfectly aligned, all pointing towards Zhongshan. In the command hall of the Dragon Sleep Project's outpost base, red dots representing reactions to special energy blaze like wildfire on a massive electronic map. Emerging from towns, wilderness, mountains, and rivers in all directions, they then converged into clear red torrents pointing towards Zhongshan. Level 1 emergency response activated. All perimeter troops to combat positions. All aerial reconnaissance units scramble. Contact headquarters and request strategic support. This could be a premeditated, unprecedented, and bizarre riot. Analyze the source. What triggered this collective anomaly? Director Zhang Zhengxing's face was ashen as he stared intently at the screen. This scene is strikingly similar to the night parade of 100 demons recorded in ancient books, but on a scale hundreds of times larger. Could it be that some force has launched a full-scale attack, or has something happened to the god of Zhongshan? Standing at the observation point, Lin Wei could feel the ground beneath her feet trembling slightly. It wasn't a physical vibration, but rather a resonance caused by the simultaneous disturbance of spatial rules by countless strange phenomena. She strained to activate her spiritual senses, but what she perceived was not brutal malice, but an indescribable urgency, a longing, even a hint of eagerness to return home. No, she murmured to herself, he's calling them on his own. On a level imperceptible to ordinary people, a silent migration sweeping across most of Daxia is unfolding. In the city's sewers, the twisted ink abandoned its pursuit of the rat and drifted eastward with the current. In the abandoned old house, whispering sounds emanate from the ceiling, bursting through the walls and drifting into the night sky. In the desolate cemetery, the inscriptions on the pale tombstones danced, pointing in one direction. Even some sources of curses that were originally deeply hidden and slowly eroding reality became restless, revealing their traces and being captured by the monitoring network. They varied in form and strength, but their actions were remarkably synchronized. Leaving their original nest, they moved with an almost instinctive speed toward Zhongshan Mountain, toward the source of that homecoming feeling. They traversed mountains and rivers, ignoring the terrain, forming a magnificent yet chilling spectacle that could only be seen with spiritual vision. Thousands upon thousands of bizarre creatures of various shapes and sizes, like pilgrims, converged from the vast land, silently and resolutely surging towards the cloud-shrouded mountain. This is not a parade of 100 ghosts. This is the power of God, sounding the horn of the soul, drawing all ghosts to pay homage. The Bureau of Alien Affairs Special Operations Team and Rapid Response Group were also immediately mobilized and on high alert, charging energy weapons and preparing various containment devices, all watching the red torrent surging in like a tidal wave with intense tension. This scale has exceeded the limits of their ability to confront it head-on. However, when the first wave of strange events reached the boundary of the Zhongshan control zone, the anticipated devastating impact did not occur. They seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall and their speed suddenly decreased. That was not a physical obstacle, but rather the point where two forces met. On one side is the ultimate attraction of the vast soul fluctuations, and on the other side is the absolute pressure of the gods' own being, which is unbearable and impossible to look directly at. They lingered outside the border, restless, and their low-level anomalies were so intense that they could barely maintain their form, trembling under the pressure of the aura, almost collapsing. He sensed these pilgrims, these food drawn to him. They are like ants attracted by honey, small, disorganized, but numerous. Lin Yi neither actively displayed hostility nor made a move. At this time, his retinue sprang into action. The servants, made of shadows, twisted plants, and newly born spirits, poured out of the mists of the territory like sheepdogs on command. They navigate through the unpredictable tides, precisely guiding and diverting them. For those with pure energy and stable form, the familia will guide them into a specific entrance, which is a spatial fold that he has just stabilized. For those that are too weak and on the verge of collapse, the clan will directly step forward, devour them, assimilate them, and transform them into the most basic energy. The entire process was efficient and orderly, like a cold, rehearsed harvesting ceremony. The officers from the Bureau of Surveillance stared in disbelief at what they saw. The bloody battle they had anticipated did not occur. What they witnessed was a bizarre and forced conscription and purification campaign initiated by God and executed efficiently by God's servants. The images transmitted from the reconnaissance planes in the sky were even more stunning. Centered on Zhongshan Mountain, invisible soul fluctuations spread like ripples, causing red dots to swarm out wherever they passed, converging into a torrent before being swallowed, guided, and disappeared by the tide of shadows at the boundary. This is no longer a crisis, it's a feast, a grand ceremony in which the aura of God emanates, all ghosts come to pay homage and servants reap the harvest. Record everything. Zhang Zhangxing's voice was hoarse, filled with incredulous excitement. This is the possibility of regional cleanup, a true strategic cleanup. Standing on high ground, gazing at the unimaginable scene in the distance, Lin Wei gained a deeper understanding of the power of God and prayed to him. This is his power. This is the era of walking with God. Within Lin Yi's subconscious, the results of this experiment were satisfactory. These endless streams of snacks, though individually small in quantity, are abundant and diverse in variety. He lazily watched all of this like a king looking down on his subjects who voluntarily offered tribute. The Hajj pilgrimage continues. The feast has just begun. The world is his pasture. Zhongshan is his dining hall. On the edge of the Zhongshan family compound, the terrifying wall composed of countless bizarre creatures, writhing and hissing, is visibly melting away. There was no fierce fighting, no desperate struggle. There was only a kind of efficiency and tranquility, almost like an assembly line operation. Lin Yi's will, like an invisible scalpel, precisely scanned this vast buffet area. He doesn't need to intervene. His kin will take care of everything. The various kinds of low-level monsters were no longer vague sources of danger in his perception at this moment, but rather individuals with different flavors and nutrients. That massive aggregate of resentment, its energy is mixed but the total amount is acceptable. It tastes sweet and is suitable as a basic energy supplement. With a slight thought, the shadows at the edge of the familiar's territory spread upwards like a living thing, gently yet irresistibly enveloping the wailing behemoth, dragging it deep underground and merging it into Lin Yi's energy cycle. The agonizing screams abruptly ceased, leaving only a trace of pure energy that had been completely absorbed. Those floating, pale ghosts, their energy is thin but they possess a cold, pure quality like a refreshing aftertaste. Several distorted creatures, seemingly composed of shadows and broken bones, swept past, their claws or mandibles easily tearing and capturing these ghosts, like owls catching birds, turning them into clusters of pure, cold light that merged into the territory of the summoned creatures and were absorbed by him. The grotesque corpses crawling on the ground and the pervasive corrosive mist were all dealt with in a categorized manner. The weak were directly crushed and absorbed, their energy converging into streams. Those with slightly unique characteristics were collected by their families and stored for later savoring. The entire process was quiet, orderly, and even carried a kind of cold elegance. His retinue perfectly carried out his will. They belonged to the servants in this grand feast. As the ripples generated by Lin Yi's consciousness grew stronger, all the familiar bodies became more solidified, and their forms underwent subtle evolution, resulting in more diverse branches. Some were faster, some had sharper claws, and some even began to emit faint, mental interference-like fluctuations. For the outside world, especially for the extremely tense Bureau of Investigation and Statistics, the scene before them was something they would never forget. The terrifying torrent that had put them on high alert, as if facing a formidable enemy, was being rapidly digested in a way they could not comprehend. In satellite images, the huge red patch representing the Erie community is rapidly shrinking and becoming sparse. The footage transmitted from the front lines no longer showed chaotic attacks, but rather eerie disappearances and the efficient work of the kin. The energy radar shows that the number of boundary anomalies has decreased by 30%. 0.50% and is still decreasing. No high-energy combat reaction detected. Repeat, no combat detected. The group of creatures is unusually active. They seem to be helping with the harvest. Inside the command center, the initial shock and fear were gradually replaced by a numb sense of awe. The bloody battle they had anticipated did not occur. Instead, they witnessed an unimaginable feast exclusively for gods. Record all data, analyze the behavior patterns of the inhabitants, track the energy flow. Zhang Zhengxing suppressed the turmoil in his heart and gave the order in a stern voice. This is an unprecedented observation opportunity. Every second is priceless. Dr. Li Yun trembled, constantly pondering the origins of these strange occurrences. How exactly did he attract these strange beings? Standing at the observation point, Lin Wei was no longer merely observing. Her soul seemed to resonate with this land, with that magnificent being deep within. She could taste the divine pleasure permeating the air, a pleasure that was not human emotion. Rather, it is a deeper, more essential satisfaction, like the earth drawing sweet rain or the stars following their orbits. This sense of satisfaction sent shivers down her spine, filling her with an indescribable joy and peace. She watched as those eerie sights, which terrified ordinary people and even elite special forces soldiers, were swept away like dust. Watching his kin carry out God's will efficiently and devoutly, he felt no fear, only an almost fanatical reverence and sense of belonging. This is not a massacre, but a purification, a sublimation, the inevitable destiny of the humble returning to the highest existence. It is her greatest honor to witness and participate in this process. This unprecedented pilgrimage of 100 demons lasted for a full day and night. The last wisp of corrosive smoke was inhaled and swallowed by a massive, shadowy, lobe-shaped kin. When the last screeching potato was dragged underground, the border of the territory finally returned to its former peace, and its pale purple hue was restored, although the calm surface was permeated with a chilling and eerie atmosphere. The night sky was clear, as if the terrifying scene of countless ghosts coming together was just a collective hallucination. But Lin Yi could sense that things were different. A vast, complex, yet abundant energy surged into his body. Through efficient refinement and absorption, the power he could control was slightly enhanced once again. It was not a qualitative leap, but it made his foundation more solid and his control over his subjects more adept. The newly opened small inner space also became more stable. The chaos at the edges was slightly dispelled, and it expanded slightly. I had a good meal. His retinue and the echo of his received immense benefit. Their numbers increased by nearly 30%, their average individual strength increased by about 20%, and more variants with special abilities emerged. A nascent legion of divine servants, diverse in form and complementary in ability, has already taken shape. They lie dormant quietly in the shadows of their domain, in the crevices of rocks, and even in the air, ready to carry out God's will at any moment. Inside the command center of the Bureau of Disorder, everyone stared at the now empty monitoring screens, speechless for a long time. "It's over," someone murmured. "We didn't do anything." "No," Zhang Zhangxing slowly shook his head, his gaze deep. "We witnessed it, we recorded it, and we reaffirmed the absolute correctness and necessity of cooperating with he." He turned to face all the staff, his voice tinged with weariness but even more so with excitement. "Immediately compile all data and produce a top-secret report. Simultaneously draft a new proposal." His gaze swept across the outline of Zhongshan on the screen. "Regarding how to utilize the attraction and power of the god of Zhongshan, we will shift our defensive strategy from passive nationwide firefighting to proactive regional cleanup. Perhaps we can banish the Eerie from the land of Daxia forever. The feast has ended. The harvesters were satisfied. The onlookers, however, finally glimpsed a path leading to a completely new future." Headquarters of the Bureau of Foreign Affairs' Supreme Strategic Analysis Room. The air was filled with an unusual mix of excitement and solemnity. On the giant holographic projection screen, the complete record of the 100 Ghosts pilgrimage event was played repeatedly, from the terrifying beginning of the gathering of all kinds of ghosts to the peaceful end of the efficient harvest. Every detail was slowed down, analyzed, and annotated. The participants were no longer tense as in an emergency response, but rather filled with the excitement and caution of exploring a new continent. "Data analysis complete," Li Yun said, her voice trembling slightly. The event lasted 31 hours and 42 minutes. Preliminary estimates indicate that the total number of strange individuals that flooded into the Zhongshan area exceeded 170,000, although the energy intensity of each individual was generally not high. But this number is more than 1.5 times the total number of anomalies we've contained in the past 10 years. A collective gasp filled the conference room. 1.5 days, that's 1.5 times what they did in 10 years, and it's all automated, that efficiency. The process is even more important. An old general pointed to the efficient work of the dependents in the picture and the consistently calm core of the dependents' quarters. No conflict, no spread, no pollution. It's as if they were guided by an invisible hand, completing the transformation from disaster to resource. Our previous strategy was to deploy nationwide. Wherever something unusual happened, we would rush there like a fire brigade. The Director General spoke slowly, his gaze sweeping over every high-ranking official and advisor present. "We are exhausted and suffer heavy losses, often only able to contain the problem but unable to eradicate it completely. It might even require paying a huge price to transport the most troublesome cases to Zhongshan and request he to handle them." He paused, then raised his voice, his tone carrying a clarity that seemed to pierce through the fog. "But now we see another possibility. The holographic map has been switched to show the entire territory of Daxia. Now many of the strange phenomena have disappeared. This is something that is almost impossible to do by manpower alone. Since he possesses such a powerful attraction, it can drive even the most bizarre instincts to seek homage." A bespectacled strategist adjusted his glasses, a sharp glint in his eyes. "Can we shift from passive defense and transportation to proactive guidance and driving? Just like a shepherd driving his flock into a designated fence." Another person chimed in, their tone excited. "That's right," the director slammed his hand on the table. "We don't need to fight the supernatural in every single place. We can develop strategies that leverage our research on bizarre behavioral patterns. By combining the field of attraction emanating from he, we designed a series of safe passages. We can develop specific sound waves, energy fields, or pheromone devices to simulate or enhance a certain aura of gods, and to induce and drive away specific types of eeriness. We can clear out the pre-designed guiding corridors to prevent the bizarre tidal surge from impacting densely populated areas. We can establish a tiered processing mechanism. Low-level, large quantity, and mobile animals will be directly guided to Zhongshan for purification and harvesting. High-level animals with special characteristics will be handled according to the situation, either guided or processed using traditional methods. Once the mindset was opened, all sorts of bold and innovative solutions were quickly proposed. The atmosphere in the meeting room became lively. "This will be a revolution," exclaimed an excited logistics officer. "It will greatly reduce casualties among frontline personnel and the consumption of supplies. But the risks are enormous." Some remained calm. "How can we ensure the guidance process is absolutely controllable? If it gets out of control midway and the unpredictable tides deviate from their course, the consequences would be unimaginable. Further research is needed into the attraction patterns of God to develop accurate predictive models. We also need his cooperation or at least tacit approval. Our guidance in essence utilizes his characteristics." All eyes turned back to the outline of Zhongshan on the screen. Then he looked at the messenger of the Dragon's Rest project. Lin Wei's holographic projection appeared in front of a specially prepared chair. This is not her place, but his place. She looked healthier than before, her eyes were more profound, and she exuded an indescribable aura. The subtle influence of being close to God over a long period of time. Lin Wei said, "Director, to convey our strategic vision to he. Ask he if he would allow us to make such an attempt." Lin Wei nodded, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and immersed herself in connecting with that vast will. She is no longer just a mouthpiece. Her understanding, her feelings, and even her emotions can convey information more effectively. Lin Yi listened intently. Lin Yi pondered, noting that the number of low-end supernatural beings across Daxia had decreased significantly. Does his action amount to draining the pond dry? Is it like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs? Although more strange phenomena may occur in the future, their numbers will be too small to warrant any intervention. Drive them away, guide them. Deliver more food to their doorsteps more efficiently. A very interesting idea. These tiny yet clever creatures always manage to find ways to please him. They proactively gather the scattered snacks together to create a more sumptuous feast. This is certainly much more convenient than waiting for them to come sporadically on their own or having them laboriously transport them. He had no objection to this. As long as his slumber is not disturbed and his digestion is not affected, he will naturally accept any amount of energy that comes his way. A faint, indifferent emotion, tinged with agreement and a hint of expectation, was relayed back through Lin Wei. Lin Wei opened her eyes, a hint of purple light gleaming within them, and looked at the screen. "Director, he has agreed." Inside the command center, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, followed by a surge of immense joy. Cooperation. Deeper cooperation. The strategic shift from passively accepting to actively guiding has received the approval of God. Immediately establish the Purifying Flame Project Team. The Director General of the State Administration of Radio, Film, and Television made a decisive decision. Integrate all relevant departments, prioritize the research and development of guidance technologies, and plan the first batch of guidance routes and objectives. We need to conduct small-scale trials as soon as possible. Purifying flame means using God as the flame to purify the universe. The strategic balance between the bizarre and humanity began to tip. The Daxia Supernatural Affairs Bureau will be a firefighter constantly on the move to deal with supernatural events around the world. They gradually transformed into shepherds who wielded the ultimate power of purification and actively cleansed the world. All of this depends on the god of Zhongshan. A new era has begun. Daxia will eventually be reduced to a wasteland, a highly confidential laboratory under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Li Yun stared at the chaotic, constantly fluctuating data stream on the holographic projection in front of her, her brows furrowed. She rubbed her throbbing temples and shook her head at her assistant. "It still doesn't work. The attraction effect produced by our simulated energy fluctuations combined with a specific mental frequency amplification device. At most, it only accounts for 30% of the natural fluctuations emitted by Chen Yan and his group, and it is extremely unstable and cannot be sustained. Not to mention comparing it to his power." The assistant sighed, "Doctor, this is all the methods we can think of." That fluctuation seemed to be more than just a simple combination of emotions and mental state. It's more like something deeper, related to the essence of the soul, which our current technology and theories can hardly replicate completely. Li Yun turned off the projector and leaned back wearily in her chair. As she recalled her findings from analyzing the data of Chen Yan and others, an idea gradually became clear to her. "Since we can't perfectly simulate it," she stood up, her tone decisive like a researcher, "we'll use the original if necessary. Use their spirit to coordinate with the spirit frequency amplification device." Melting City, a safe house temporarily requisitioned by the Bureau of Extraterritorial Control. Chen Yan, originally a folklorist, is now the representative of the secret society, the Voice of Silence. Looking at the group of people in front of him, dressed in casual clothes but with a capable demeanor and sharp eyes. He felt both apprehensive and an indescribable excitement. The dozens of silent voices members behind him were mostly pale-faced, with lingering pain and fear in their eyes, as if tormented by something eerie. Because of their unique mental state, they are more likely to encounter strange and supernatural things. But when they looked at the simple notebook in Chen Yan's hand, which recorded their imagined doctrines and rituals, they also felt a hint of almost blind hope. They all heard the voice from deep space, the voice from the quietest, darkest night. That was their destiny. Mr. Chen Yan and everyone at the voice of silence. The head of the bureau staff spoke calmly, yet with an undeniable air of authority. We have taken note of your organization and the troubles you are facing, the harassment you are experiencing from strange occurrences. Chen Yan took a deep breath. He was under immense pressure talking to the officials. He didn't know the official attitude towards their secret society. Trying to appear calm, yes, sir. We listen to whispers, follow the shadows, and search for the traces of the end. But not all beings lurking in the darkness harbor good intentions. He was referring to the low-level anomalies that kept harassing them. We can provide assistance to systematically mitigate or even eliminate the erosion and harassment you are experiencing, the staff member stated bluntly. But in exchange, we need your cooperation. He did not explain what they were required to do, only emphasizing that it was an official mission related to maintaining social stability and national security. Chen Yan acted almost without hesitation. A fanatical glint flashed in his eyes as he pressed the notebook to his chest, as if sensing the divine revelation it contained. He seemed to have heard something, he thought. By doing so, he can draw closer to the Great Lord. This is the will of the Great Lord. It is a test and a responsibility he has given us. His voice trembled slightly with excitement. We are willing to cooperate, so that the Lord's way may be practiced. The followers behind him echoed him in hushed tones, their faces flushed with a sickly pallor and a sense of mission. For them, it means being able to cooperate with the government. This is undoubtedly proof of the great being they seek, and a shortcut to escape their current predicament and get closer to God. The staff of the Bureau of Superstitions looked at this group of believers whose mental state was clearly different from ordinary people, and were secretly on guard, not knowing whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But he remained outwardly calm. Very good, we will inform you of the specific arrangements later. During this period, please maintain discipline and refrain from any unauthorized gatherings or ceremonies. The cooperation was initially achieved in a way that appeared to be a win-win situation, but in reality, the two parties had completely different goals. Meanwhile, across the ocean, in the Lighthouse Laboratory, in the conference room of the Supernatural Strategic Defense, on the huge electronic screen, a map of anomalous energy monitoring from around the world is displayed in segments. This kind of satellite monitoring can only provide a general overview, but it can still reveal a lot of information. Among them, the sector representing the Huxia region exhibits a disturbing, almost stagnant state of health. Only scattered and faint red dots occasionally flickered, forming a stark contrast with the mottled landscape of Europe, the chaos of South America, and the almost continuous shocking crimson of their own lands. Gentlemen, look at this. The watcher pointed to the screen, his voice low. According to our intelligence, the frequency of recorded unusual events within Daxia has decreased by more than 90% over the past 3 days. The meeting room was silent, save for the sound of heavy breathing. And we, the watcher, tapped the crimson patch representing the North American continent. On average, we handle more than 20 Class C incidents every day, at least one Class B incident every week, and the shadow of Class A threats never leaves our lives. Our containment facilities are nearing capacity, and troop casualty rates remain high. Even if Daxia helps us deal with some of the extremely dangerous containment objects, it won't be able to resolve this situation. An intelligence analyst chimed in, his voice trembling slightly. Based on intelligence gathered from multiple sources, as well as monitoring via satellite and special means, it can be confirmed that the sharp decrease in unusual events in Daxia is directly related to their top-secret project codenamed Zhongshan in the southern part of Beijing. He paused, then pulled up a processed animation simulating energy flow. What's even more disturbing is that about 78 hours ago, our GPS monitoring system detected an astonishing energy fluctuation, pinpointing its source precisely to Zhongshan Mountain. Almost simultaneously, paranormal energy readings across much of Daxia surged abnormally, activating countless previously hidden or dormant anomalous entities that exhibited a highly consistent migration pattern. The animation shows countless red dots emerging from all over Daxia, like iron filings attracted by an invisible magnet, rushing madly towards the location of Zhongshan. The impact of this event cannot be hidden at all. We call this a migration event, the analyst said hoarsely. After about 30 hours, these attracted anomalous entity signals collectively disappeared. It wasn't that the fluctuations were annihilated. It was more like they were completely swallowed up by something. Meanwhile, the activity level of paranormal energy within Daxia has recovered and remained at the alarmingly low level we are currently observing. Our conjecture is that the strange occurrences within Daxia seem to have vanished due to this recent upheaval. A suppressed gasp filled the conference room. Is it Zhongshan again, devouring? You mean that Zhongshan isn't just dealing with the strange things, it's actively attracting and then swallowing them? An official, his face pale, asked, "What exactly is this? What is Daxia hiding?" "The ultimate weapon?" another official asked, his voice filled with disbelief and deep dread. "What kind of weapon could achieve this? This is no longer a weapon. It's more like a living, hungry abyss. Perhaps it's some kind of containment application we don't know about, or perhaps something else entirely." The intelligence analyst's tone was extremely grave. "But in any case, the Huxia people have communicated with an existence that we cannot understand or even imagine. Perhaps it is the existence of gods." The meeting room was filled with envy, jealousy, and a deeper sense of unease and fear. What I envy is the peace and tranquility the other person possesses. Jealousy stems from the potential power the other person might wield. What I fear is the very nature of that existence located on Zhongshan Mountain. It can attract and devour the strange entities within Daxia today, but what about tomorrow? Will its appetite increase? Will its range of attraction expand? What would happen if it got out of control, or if the Huxia decided to actively use this attraction? The mere thought of the potential horrors associated with that coordinate point sends chills down one's spine. We must speed up the Statue of Liberty project. The lighthouse keeper slammed his fist on the table, his eyes bloodshot. This time, his voice held not only urgency, but also an undisguised fear. We cannot entrust the security of our nation to the goodwill of the Huxia people, or to the appetite and mood of that Zhongshan monster. We must have our own god. Even if it's man-made, we absolutely must have one. How long until the Statue of Liberty project is unveiled? We need to use he to increase the confidence of our people and the entire international community in us. Our lighthouse is the lighthouse of the world, the lighthouse of civilization, the lighthouse of freedom. Quickly launch the Statue of Liberty project and grant all permissions. The pressure, the sense of urgency, and the deep fear of that unknown coordinate in the distance gripped the hearts of everyone in the conference room like cold iron clamps. They stared at the glaring tranquility on the screen, a tranquility maintained by unknown terror, their expressions incredibly complex. Once again, the people of the free United States felt the terror of the abyss. The former residence of Zhongshan's family members is no longer what it used to be. After devouring the massive amount of 10,000 ghosts, this area underwent a profound transformation and metamorphosis. The eerie, unsettling restlessness and sharp malice that once permeated the air have not disappeared. Instead, it was forcibly woven and digested, settling into a deeper and more profound tranquility. This stillness is not deathly silence, but rather like the breathing of some immense being in slumber. It contains a breathtaking grandeur and a logic that transcends comprehension, hidden in silence. The sky had a base color that looked as if it had been splashed with a thick, dark purple glaze. Against this backdrop, countless tiny fragmented stardust, like shattered glass, slowly rotated and flickered. They are not real stars, but rather distorted and beautiful reflections cast by some supreme rule in the dimension of reality. Occasionally, streaks of light like the aurora borealis would flash by, but their colors were even more eerie, a ghostly purple or a ghastly green. That was alien energy that had not yet been fully absorbed and transformed, and under the guidance of some invisible force, it was being forcibly incorporated into the rules of this space. On the Earth, the luminescent plants take on an even more unnatural form. A several-meter-tall shade tree, issued by the Bureau of Irregularities, number ZZ1 rose from the ground. The branches and leaves resembled a wildly growing, twisted cluster of dark purple crystals, with a viscous darkness flowing slowly within them like blood vessels. The dream orchid ZZ2 spreads along the ground, its flowers with a pale, human face-like center. Occasionally, a thin crack would appear, revealing beneath it a pupil composed of countless tiny stars, never blinking. Its fragrance can indeed soothe the soul, but it's more like a gentle numbing, causing the senses to unconsciously sink into a deeper dream. Thick purple vines cling to the crystallized rock wall, bearing purple star grapes ZZ3, whose skins resemble fragments of a starry sky. Touching them, one can clearly feel the slight folds in space and the biting cold. The most significant change is the stability of space, but this stability itself is also strange. The sense of distortion and disorientation that I used to feel near the edge has disappeared, replaced by a clear sense of boundaries and repulsion. It was as if this land had been gently and completely peeled off the skin of the main world. This formed a self-consistent bubble world, or a prototype of a divine kingdom. The barriers of space have a translucent amber-like texture, with a faint purple halo that flows slowly within. The instruments from the Bureau of Geopolitical Affairs confirmed that the spatial anchoring coefficient at this location was abnormally high, rendering conventional spatial interference methods completely ineffective. It's as if the space itself possesses inertia, refusing to be influenced by external rules. The most active residents of this newly formed divine kingdom, Lin Yi's clan, exemplify the non-human order in their very existence. They are no longer blurry shadow outlines, their forms are clearer, which makes them more challenging to our understanding. Clad in shadow-scaled armor, this hound-like clan is designated ZD-1 Hunter by the Bureau of Alien Affairs. Deep within its scarlet 1 to 99 eyes, upon closer inspection, one can see miniature purple vortices slowly rotating counterclockwise. They leaped in the shadows, leaving brief spiderweb-like purple streaks in the air as they moved. The suspended observer, Heterogeneous Management Bureau designation ZD2 Observer, is no longer just a jellyfish or an eyeball. They are more like irregular polyhedra formed by the fusion of liquid darkness and solidified starlight, constantly undergoing slight deformation. Countless tiny points of light flicker on their body's surface, as if transmitting a flow of information that mortals cannot decipher, together weaving a sensory network covering the territory of their relatives. There are also cleaners that cling to the ground like liquid metal or activated mud, official designation ZD3 Cleaner. They actively devour naturally deposited energy residues or unstable structures within their territory, maintaining the purity of the environment. They are orderly and each performs its own function, like components of a finely functioning ecosystem. Zhang Qi's feeding team now only needs to send the sealed container to the designated platform when feeding. Then a corresponding member of the clan would step forward, skillfully open the container, drag out the strange creature inside, and transport it to the core. Most of the strange creatures are suppressed by the aura of the kinship territory, leaving them powerless to resist. The entire process was efficient, quiet, and possessed a cold, inhuman beauty. It is located within the outpost base, established by the Foreign Affairs Bureau on the edge of the dependent settlement. Dr. Li Yun was looking at the latest batch of collected samples and data, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of excitement and confusion. The researchers flipped through the document, which listed the findings, which had already been numbered and archived. Environmental Derivatives Series ZW. ZW1 Energy Mist. Naturally diffuses in the environment, containing pure active energy, which has a significant calming and nourishing effect on the mind and can slightly neutralize low-level mental pollution. ZW2 Activated Moss. Possesses extremely strong healing abilities for physical wounds. Experiments show that it can even effectively remove specific strange contaminants attached to the body. Shadow Ore. Naturally possesses powerful isolation properties against mental pollution, making it an ideal base material for manufacturing high-end mental protection equipment. ZW4 Ice Crystal. Exhibits extremely strong absorption properties against mental anomalies. Its mental purification ability far surpasses that of energy mist. Special Phenomena and Transformations Series ZT/ZR. ZT1 Whisper. Originating from the unconscious fluctuations of He, it can effectively suppress conventional bizarre activities. However, individuals with heightened sensitivity may report experiencing persistent hallucinations and auditory hallucinations after exposure. ZR1 Listener, a human or other creature, deeply transformed by the whispers, possessing the ability to perceive and even begin to understand the whispers, but accompanied by severe cognitive distortions and logical illusions, and will unusually attract eerie beings. Zekwer, a further transformation of Listener, based on limited observations. Individuals can actively echo and whisper, generating a powerful purifying field with a wide reach. The current upper limit is unknown, the risk level needs to be assessed, and cognitive distortions and logical illusions are more severe. ZRW Top Secret, insufficient access permissions, data encrypted. Of course, using these derivatives will cause his aura to emanate from one's body, giving one a sense of affinity towards one's benefactors. It requires careful study before use. The researchers busily recorded, analyzed, and put forward a series of bold hypotheses. They realized that the existence of these derivatives made the existence of the god of Zhongshan possible. It is not merely a powerful, mysterious processor and ultimate weapon, but also an inexhaustible treasure trove that surpasses existing technological systems. Every feeding, every display of power has the potential to lead to new, groundbreaking discoveries. The focus of the research has quietly shifted from the initial question of how to safely utilize to how to understand and transform the miracles he brings. As the only major bridge connecting humanity to the core of the abyss, Lin Wei's condition also underwent a more profound transformation. She remains stationed at the liaison station on the edge of the dependent settlement, but it is no longer a temporary reinforced concrete building. Instead, it was slowly assimilated by its family, and occasionally dark gold patterns would appear on the walls, flickering like breathing. The energy in the air was so concentrated that she could stay energetic without needing to sleep. Her appearance changed even more noticeably. The ends of her once jet black hair are now tinged with a dull purple. When their emotions fluctuated, those eyes would faintly flash with a purple light, like the sky above their domain containing subtle stardust. Her skin became even whiter with almost no visible pores, exuding an inhuman level of refinement. More importantly, it's her perception. She no longer needed to consciously concentrate to vaguely sense the pulse of her family's territory. I sensed the thoughts of those clansmen, if they could even be called thoughts. She can understand the simple messages they convey. At this moment, it seems she no longer needs protective clothing. She stood there, utterly serene, even more serene. The spiritual connection with Lin Yi became closer and more comfortable than ever before. Her past anxieties about the eerie atmosphere have now completely vanished. The whispers that once filled her with fear and trembling now sound like her mother's murmurs and the songs of her hometown, bringing her unparalleled peace and a sense of belonging. She was no longer just a messenger. She felt herself gradually becoming a part of this land, to become a sense, an extension of that great being. She stood in front of the observation window, gazing at the eerie yet tranquil abyss in the distance. There was no fear in my heart, only a profound, almost devout peace and joy. She could feel it in that deep center. That magnificent being is now lazily asleep, digesting the feast that just passed. With each breath he takes, this land becomes more real and more powerful. He is well, she reported to Zhang, zhanxing over the encrypted line, her voice calm and carrying an unquestionable trust. The family is stable, more stable than ever before. We are safe. At this moment, Lin Yi's consciousness was dormant in the core area composed of solidified dark purple starry sky. The subtle changes in the entire territory were like extensions of his own body, clearly reflected in his perception. He could taste the sweetness of every bit of energy in this land returning from chaos to end, a cold yet satisfying feeling of fullness. He could sense the subtle struggles and cries as these strange energies were being devoured and digested, the process itself. It carries with it a kind of cruel pleasure of controlling everything. It's as ferocious and pleasurable as a human tearing apart a fried chicken leg. In his eyes, those families who worked orderly on the land were, like extensions of themselves, more flexible organs or tools. They operate with high efficiency. This has diminished his interest in even handling those lowly snacks, as he only needs a thought, and his retinue will take care of them for him. Even the low-level anomalies fed by the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs no longer require his personal intervention. He only needs to wait for his kin to be sent to the core area to taste those bizarre bodies. Whether sweet, spicy, crisp, or smooth, it can be delicious. As for those inert and unpleasant-tasting oddities, they were left to be digested and shared by the clan. It will transform into energy, flowing into his retinue and becoming a part of him. The eternal starry night hues of the sky, the phosphorescent plants on the earth, all these appeared both eerie and terrifying to human eyes. For humanity, the extreme disorder is terrifying. But in Lin Yi's vision, this was merely a natural phenomenon where the energy cycle was stabilizing and the internal rules were becoming apparent. He even felt that this land was much more pleasing to the eye than it had been in its previous chaotic and restless state, more like a home. The concept flashed through his mind, carrying a warmth that even he himself was unaware of. As for those clever ants marveling at the derivatives, Lin Yi was not entirely oblivious. Through that ubiquitous mental network, these messages are like a gentle breeze across a lake, creating ripples. His attitude toward this was one of indifference tinged with a hint of nonchalant approval. Many of those things are merely residues or metabolic products that naturally precipitate out during digestion and are useless to him. Humans treasure it, which saves him the trouble of dealing with garbage. In return, he could get more palatable food and a comfortable environment, making this deal quite worthwhile in his eyes. All he needs to do is ensure the existence of this partner who can continuously provide food and convenience. Lin Yi's deep consciousness remained dormant, his main consciousness had not yet awakened, and his superficial consciousness was still asleep. The general consciousness lazily immerses itself in this ever-growing abyss under its control, digesting the previous feast. At the same time, he casually browsed the information about the chaotic situation outside the country that was being transmitted through Lin Wei and her clan's network. A mixture of indifference and a hint of anticipation for higher quality ingredients flowed through his vast and ancient consciousness. They seem very busy. A thought rose like a bubble in an abyss. Are you preparing lunch for me? Maybe next time you can send something different. 10,000 meters below the North Atlantic, eternal darkness and high pressure rule everything. The searchers team from the Pandora organization traveled in a specially designed submersible codenamed Abyss Walker. It is gliding almost silently toward the last known coordinates of the submarine Song of the Siren that lost contact. Inside the submersible, the atmosphere was even colder and heavier than the surrounding seawater. Captain Hank gazed through the high-strength porthole at the limited darkness cut through by searchlights. On the sonar screen, apart from the occasional strangely shaped deep-sea creature swimming by, there are endless underwater mountains and sediment plains. 5 nautical miles from the target coordinates, the driver reported, his voice tense. All personnel highest alert level. Life detectors and energy sensors are operating at full power. Mental resistance inhibitors remain activated. Hank gave the order, his fingers unconsciously stroking the containment device worn inside his combat suit, which was said to provide additional mental protection. This was given to him by the regulator before he set off. It was said to be able to prevent mental anomalies below Class B. As the distance closed, an indescribable sense of oppression began to permeate the air. It wasn't from physical water pressure, but rather a feeling as if countless eyes were watching me in the dark. Captain, the sonar is reporting an anomaly. The sonar operator's voice carried a hint of uncertainty. Near the target coordinates there are multiple weak life signals, but the waveforms are very strange. Unlike any known marine organism, it was more like some kind of superimposed chaotic aggregate. Hank frowned. Will it even be able to form an image? During the trial, signal interference was very strong, and the image was extremely unstable. Blurry, distorted image fragments began to flash on the main screen. That appeared to be the outline of the Song of the Siren, but something looked off. Its shell appears to be covered with a large amount of wriggling, proliferating black material resembling tumors or tentacles. Some of the protruding robotic arms twisted into bizarre angles, as if they had become lifeless arthropods. At God, what is that? One of the team members gasped. Just then, the life detector's alarm suddenly went off in a piercing blare. Multiple high-speed targets are approaching, coming from the direction of the siren's song. Their speed is unbelievable. Almost simultaneously, a dull thud echoed from outside the submersible. Thump, 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 we've been attacked. It's ... it's those things. The driver stared in horror at the external surveillance screen. In the image, several distorted figures are moving in a manner that violates fluid dynamics. They traverse the deep sea at high speed, using their mutated bodies or extended tentacles and bone spikes to frantically ram into the pressure-resistant shell of the Abyss Walker. They still vaguely resemble human structures, but now they look more like monsters crawling out of a deep-sea nightmare. The torso is covered with slimy scales or chitinous carapace, and the fused and deformed hands and feet have transformed into flippers or claws. The heads were twisted and deformed. Some were reduced to enormous, malevolent eyeballs, while others had gaping maws filled with sharp teeth emitting silent roars. They were still covered in tattered fragments of Pandora's uniforms. It was those deep-sea creatures transformed by Lin Yi's power. Fire, use pulse torpedoes and cutting nets, Hank barked, though his heart was filled with a sense of foreboding. The submarine's weapon system activated, firing directed energy pulses and a specially designed alloy cutting mesh at its dependence. However, a devastating scene unfolded. The pulse energy vanished the moment it touched the body of the person being treated, as if it had disappeared into thin air. It only caused their eerie glow to flicker briefly, without causing any real harm. And the cutting net, strong enough to cut high-strength steel cables, fell on them. But they were repelled and torn apart by an invisible force field or by their own tough and twisted bodies. They exhibit astonishing resistance and even adaptability to Pandora's technological weapons. Impossible, our weapons are ineffective. Their energy responses and the unusual fluctuations emitted by the siren's song share the same origin. Panic spread inside the submarine. What's even more frightening is that those relatives didn't seem to be attacking blindly. They cleverly avoided the submarine's thrusters, focusing their attacks on vulnerable areas such as observation windows, sensor arrays, and weapon interfaces. Their behavior carries a cold, predatory intelligence. Mental pollution readings are skyrocketing. The suppressor is about to overload. The technician responsible for monitoring the team member's mental state screamed. Hank felt a wave of dizziness. The containment object had become scalding hot, as if issuing a warning. The bulkhead in front of him began to distort, and the faces of his teammates flickered in and out of focus under the light, sometimes appearing normal, sometimes transforming into a mass of writhing tentacles. The whispers resumed, clearer and more enticing and threatening than the recordings from headquarters. Come, join the eternal embrace. Pandora, the blasphemers, must be eradicated. For's the great end. Hold fast to your mind, Hank roared, but his voice sounded incredibly distant. The impact became even more violent. With a sickening metallic tearing sound, a crack appeared in a porthole, and high-pressure seawater mixed with cold, sweet-smelling water rushed in. The sealed compartment has failed. Wait. Before one of the team members could finish speaking, a pale, enormous tentacle with suction cups suddenly burrowed into the crack. Like a living whip, it instantly coiled around his waist and abdomen, dragging him into the endless darkness outside the porthole amidst his piercing screams. The hunt has begun. These deep-sea creatures, like the most skilled assassins, utilize memories inherited from Pier and others. Understanding the structure of the submersible and familiarity with the deep sea allowed them to systematically destroy the system and hunt down the crew. Hank watched helplessly as his teammates were dragged away by tentacles and torn apart by claws that suddenly pounced from the shadows. Or, under the impact of mental pollution, they may go completely insane, begin attacking those around them, and undergo horrific physical mutations. He attempted to activate the submarine's self-destruct program, only to discover that the control system had been invaded and locked by an external viscous will. Finally, the entire Abyss Walker submersible was enveloped and dragged by a large number of its followers. Like a flying insect entangled in a spider web, it slowly sinks into the deeper, darker trench. Before Hank completely lost consciousness, through the last intact observation window, he saw a scene that froze his soul. Those who had completed their hunt did not rush to enjoy their spoils, but instead turned eastward. Roughly in the direction of the Eurasian continent, in the absolute depths of the sea, they made an incredibly devout and perfectly synchronized pilgrimage gesture. On their distorted faces, one could even discern a trace of fanatical reverence and the satisfaction of having accomplished their mission. A clear thought, like a final judgment, was imprinted on Hank's collapsing consciousness. We are the shadows of vengeance, born from the rejection of great beings. The concept of Pandora is the mark of blasphemy. Hunting until the concept is erased. Then darkness completely engulfed him. His body began to merge into this deep-sea nest. His consciousness was assimilated, and he became a new hunting unit filled with endless malice towards Pandora. These seeds of revenge, unintentionally sown by Lin Wei with a hint of displeasure, quietly took root and sprouted in the deep sea. They are no longer aimless mutants, but conceptual hunters with clear goals and terrifying power. They lurk in the darkest corners of this planet, searching for their next prey bearing the mark of Pandora. Prepare to unleash the silent wrath of the gods upon all beings connected to them. Their existence is noble. They were directly instilled by the consciousness of the gods who destroyed Pandora and are a consciousness from the gods. Their power has already exceeded the limit. How strong their mutation is in that instant depends on the upper limit that their bodies can withstand. Similarly, it was precisely Lin Yi's aversion to the concept of Pandora that led these familias to ultimately aim at destroying Pandora. Then it returns to the end. They were born in the deep sea and thus evolved deep-sea characteristics. They are true abyss walkers, the deep-sea familia beyond their territory. Meanwhile, Lin Yi, far away in Zhongshan, sensed some small tools that would actively clean up impurities. What will he do? He falls into a deep sleep again. P.S. Today's 2 chapters total over 6,000 words. Please give me a little gift. The aftershocks of the 100 ghosts paying homage were like a thorough cleansing of the Earth's crust, sweeping away all the filth that had clung to the land of Daxia. The effect is immediate. The command centers of the various branches and special operations teams under the Bureau of Foreign Affairs were once brightly lit 24 hours a day. Alarms blared and shouts rang out, the air thick with the distinctive smell of gunpowder, sweat, and tense nerves. Now, however, it possesses an almost luxurious tranquility. Zhao Gang, the 3rd Special Operations Squad leader of the Jingnan branch, stared blankly at the situation map of his jurisdiction, which was almost entirely green, on the big screen for a full half hour. The strong tea beside him had long since gone cold, and a dull film had formed on the surface of the tea. This would have been unimaginable in the past. In the past, his cup of tea would often be interrupted by a new emergency alarm before he could even take a second sip, and it would eventually go cold. The tea is poured out, then replaced with piping hot fresh tea over and over again, just like their endless battle. Boss, team member Li Qian tiptoed over, holding a steaming cup of coffee, her face showing a long-lost ease that belonged to a young girl. What are you looking at? You're practically turning me into a waiting-for-husband rock. Zhao Gang suddenly snapped out of his daze, as if he had been awakened from a long and exhausting dream. He blinked his dry eyes, somewhat bewildered, and pointed to the reassuring green ocean. His tone was tinged with disbelief and disorientation, even with a barely perceptible sob. I'm just not used to it. The last time I saw such a clean interface was probably back when I first joined the company, during the training simulation. Li Qian chuckled, yeah, the patrol car is practically rusty. Old Zhang and his team were actually studying recipes in the duty room yesterday, saying they'd have a hot pot party when they're off duty. How decadent, this remark elicited a low chuckle from the command center. The laughter carried no trace of past heaviness, only a sense of relief, as if one had survived a catastrophe. An older team member silently pulled a yellowed group photo from his pocket, gently tracing the faces forever frozen in their youth with his fingers, and murmured softly, "Brothers, it seems like we can finally catch our breath. My parents are both in good health, and my kids are doing well too, getting into good schools. We watched over the road you didn't finish walking for you, and now the road seems much smoother. Don't worry, everything is fine." These low, somber words, like a gentle breeze across a lake, brought a brief moment of merriment to a standstill in the command center. It's a feeling that mixes endless longing for fallen comrades, a deep appreciation for the peace we have now, and a small but firm hope for an ordinary life in the future. It flows silently in the tranquil air, nourishing everyone's heart. Beside him, a young team member lowered his head, rapidly tapping on his phone screen yet typing with utmost seriousness. "Dad, Mom, honey, I'm off tomorrow. How about we have dinner at home tonight? What would you like to eat? I'll buy it." Boss, Li Qian gently placed the still warm cup of coffee she had been holding next to Zhao Gang's cup of cold tea, her voice much softer than before. "It's time to get off work. Do you have any plans?" She paused as if gathering her courage before continuing. "A friend gave me 2 movie tickets for a new film. I heard it's pretty good." As soon as she finished speaking, several team members with sharp ears immediately started winking and jeering. "Wow, movie tickets, Qianer, that's not enough. Why only invite the boss? We want to relax too." Li Qian was no weak girl. Upon hearing this, she immediately raised her eyebrows and grabbed a rolled-up copy of today's internal daily report. With nimble movements, he delivered a gentle but effective physics lesson to the jeering crowd, accompanied by exaggerated groans and smacks. "If you want to see a movie, buy your own tickets. If you keep making a fuss, I'll have to do extra training with you next time." After she finished making a scene, she turned her head and looked at Zhao Gang again, her gaze carrying a hint of barely perceptible tension and anticipation. Zhao Gang looked at the spirited yet somewhat stubborn girl in front of him, then at the cup of hot coffee that had replaced the cold tea, and paused for a moment. He remained silent for a moment, perhaps the faces of his fallen comrades flashing through his mind. "I've seen countless cold nights spent amidst sirens blaring, and I've also seen this vibrant group of companions before me, with whom I can finally relieve some of my burden. People should always move on from the shadows of the past. For those who remain forever in darkness, and even more so for those who struggle to live and move towards the light." He took a deep breath, as if he had unloaded some invisible burden, and the tense lines on his face softened a little. He reached out, his movements slow but remarkably firm, and accepted the cup of hot coffee that carried more than just warmth. "All good," he responded in a low voice which was not loud, but it clearly reached the ears of Li Qian and the team members who had their ears perked up. In an instant, it felt as if a warm current flowed through the command room. They can finally temporarily escape from the endless fighting and sacrifice, and have the opportunity to touch those daily things that have been postponed indefinitely. Spend time with family, enjoy a peaceful meal without being disturbed, and watch a movie without worrying about an emergency assembly. Or simply to get a full, sweet sleep without being woken by a piercing alarm. Outside the window, dusk arrived as expected, and the warm orange light bathed the entire sky, so gentle it was almost unbelievable. This time, however, they stood in the deepening twilight, no longer afraid of this beauty, because they are no longer afraid of the dark. This change is not limited to the official level. In order to maintain stability, the authorities have concealed the existence of something strange on the surface. Most of the bizarre incidents were classified as special accidents. However, it is obvious that with so many strange occurrences and so many people in the know, it is impossible to keep the secret completely airtight. In a hidden corner of the internet, accessible only through special means, people discuss those things. The people here naturally understand even a little bit of the truth about the world. A tech geek with the ID DataFox posted a data analysis thread. In an extremely meticulous tone, he listed various special incidents nationwide that he had recently been able to collect from public channels. Statistical frequency curves for events including unexplained emergency responses, area lockdowns, and reports of unusual weather. The conclusion, highlighted in bold, states, based on an incomplete data model, it is estimated that the incidence of natural disturbance events within Daxia has decreased by approximately 92.7% year-on-year in the past month. Confidence interval: 70%. The post was instantly flooded with comments. Holy crap, I was wondering why I felt so at ease going out for skewers at night lately. The data expert upstairs is amazing. Although I don't understand it, I'm completely blown away. No wonder that ghost wall stairwell in our building that was causing so much trouble for half a year suddenly stopped. The property management even said the wiring was fixed, but I don't believe them. Brothers, is it possible that our professional team's skills have improved by leaps and bounds? The Dragon Group can't actually be raising a dragon, can they? Amidst the jubilation, there are always a few discordant voices trying to salvage the situation. An ID with a clearly overseas IP address, free flying, jumped out and stubbornly insisted. HMPH making a fuss over nothing. Our accident response rate in the United States has also decreased by 50 to 60%. This shows a global environmental improvement. The comment was instantly flooded with various laughing and crying and dog head emojis. Oh right, the police response rate has dropped over there. Is it because the police are all out guarding Wall Street and Beverly Hills? On how to gracefully admit that there's no one left on the street worth calling the police for. I suggest checking the location of this IP address. Was the post made in some wealthy person's private domain? Hahaha, I can't hold it in anymore. Is this what they call structural decline? The banter on the internet reflects a cold reality. In North America today, the official response system is riddled, with holes and resources are stretched thin under the impact of a constant stream of increasingly bizarre events. Limited, still functional resources were forced to make an extremely cruel prioritization. To safeguard the basic order in core cities, especially financial and political centers, and to provide customized security services for the superrich and oligarchs who pay astronomical fees. They are equipped with exoskeletons and energy weapons incorporating some forbidden technologies and drive specially modified armored vehicles. Like medieval knights, they guard the scattered, modern fortress-like private residences and underground shelters of the wealthy. As for the vast towns and rural areas, all that's left from the official response is a weak stay vigilant, take shelter where you are and await rescue. At the same time, several highly encrypted emails were delivered to the external liaison offices of certain departments in Daxia through various covert channels. The senders were several wealthy individuals with considerable influence in North America and their family foundations. The email was carefully worded, but its core intent was clear. Inquire about the feasibility and procedures for the Special Talent Introduction Program and long-term business investment and residency. The additional goodwill list is surprisingly long, involving cutting-edge technology, huge sums of money, and even political commitments in certain sensitive areas. There was no unfounded reason that prompted them to make this decision. They learned of it through their own secret channels. The ancient consciousness that lies dormant beneath Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, officially named S99, the ancient dream of Yellowstone by the Free Nation. The unknown concept exists, and its activity monitoring curve has recently broken through historical peaks and is still climbing at a desperate rate. In contrast, the almost eerie calm within Daxia and the vague rumors circulating about the Zhongshan mountain in the east. It became, in the eyes of these elites who sensed the impending doom, the only Noah's Ark ticket that shimmered with a faint light. And Pandora was originally created specifically to protect these top billionaires. It seems they've gotten into trouble lately, causing quite a few incidents. This has led many wealthy individuals to no longer fully trust Pandora, and they are seeking alternative solutions. As a result, more and more urgent secret communications, with even more astonishing stakes, began to pour from various countries to the other side of the ocean. All they need is a ticket to the east. When Zhao Gang was pulled into the movie theater for the first time by Li Qian, when the teammates actually started seriously discussing in the duty room whether to choose beef tallow or clear broth for the hot pot base. While ordinary people online secretly rejoice that they no longer feel anxious about going out at night. This peace, woven by an invisible force, is permeating every household on this land in its most simple and unadorned way. Behind this idyllic scene lies a jarring prelude to disaster already being sounded overseas. And hidden deep beneath the eerie tranquility of Zhongshan Mountain, the ultimate answer that had just let out a satisfied burp. The free United States, a place once known as the beacon of humanity. The streets that once symbolized both prosperity and filth have now become a breeding ground for chaos. Zero-yuan shopping has long since escalated from occasional social disturbances into a distorted daily economic activity involving the entire population. The burning trash can emitted acrid smoke, which mingled with the faint smell of blood in the air, creating a scene reminiscent of an impending apocalypse. On the street corner, a man in a suit and tie but with a vacant look in his eyes was frantically pointing his head at a lamppost. FBI, I know you're the ones who implanted the chip in my brain. Open the door. The marchers held up a variety of signs, blaming everything on the incompetence of the ruling party and demanding their immediate resignation. We need police, we need security. Make the free nation great again, safer than Daxia. The opposition parties are shouting slogans loudly, arguing about who should steer the ship that is about to sink. The pressure is like a tightening noose, suffocating the ruling party. Ultimately, this pressure was fully transmitted to the Lighthouse Laboratory. Faced with an almost unsolvable situation and a death order from the highest levels, the Watcher stared at the Statue of Liberty project on the screen and gritted his teeth. The final order was given, launching the first live fire demonstration of the Statue of Liberty broadcast globally. At the same time, I told the PR department to turn the filter up to the maximum. I want it to look as imposing as the alien spaceship in Independence Day. In the corners of the internet, memes about the chaos in the free country are flying around on the Huxia internet. A composite image titled An Ordinary Day in the Free Country, with a foreground of free shopping, a midground of a parade and burning vehicles, and a huge, faintly visible tentacle shadow added to the background. The caption reads, "Today's weather, scattered rain accompanied by intermittent mental pollution." The famous live streamer Brother Wang's Adventures, who once shouted in a video that the air in the free country is sweet, has a new video with a background of sealed doors and windows and flickering candlelight. He lowers his voice and looks haggard. Family members, this is the situation. The minor security issues I mentioned earlier might be slightly more serious than I described. Could you please support me more with live stream donations lately? I'd like to replace my bulletproof vest. The comments section was even more interesting. Brother Wang, don't be afraid, didn't you say the difficulties were only temporary? I suggest Brother Wang study the Militia Wilderness Survival Manual. It's better here. Even though it's messy, at least we don't have to worry about the trash cans next to us suddenly starting to sing. Want a $1 burgers, want a $1 burger, want a $1 burger. Want a $1 burgers. Is the person upstairs crazy? So, Brother Wang, where's your $1 burger? When are you going to eat it? Zhongshan's dependence housing area, the core area. Before Lin Yi's vast consciousness, there were numerous energy clusters, each the size of a ping-pong ball, constantly twisting and bouncing, their surfaces shimmering with an abnormal green light, as well as a pale, aggregated mass of resentment. This is a C-grade eerie jealousy bomb, carefully selected by the clan for its excellent taste and texture. There's also a B-grade eerie, wailing banshee aggregate. A translucent tentacle composed of shadows and faint starlight gracefully emerged from consciousness, gently enveloping a jealousy bomb. There was no chewing motion, but the moment that energy ball was touched, it was as if it had been thrown into an invisible furnace. It emitted a soft spiritual poof sound, and its very essence was instantly dismantled and devoured. It transformed into a trickle mixed with bitterness and extreme emotions, flowing into that vast, indescribable entity. A subtle, almost imperceptible ripple of satisfaction spread from the core. This feeling was similar to tasting a stimulating, bursting beef ball. He really enjoyed it. Immediately afterwards, another, more solid tentacle, seemingly made of liquid, reached towards the wailing banshee aggregate. The tentacles did not forcefully tear, but instead gently probed into the pale mist like straws. Its sweetness lies in its wailing, its flavor in its resentment, and its cool aftertaste in its despair. For him, this was the perfect drink. At the same time, Lin Yi's generalized consciousness swept across the large screen of the outpost base. Watching the chaotic street scene in real life and the heavily filtered, dazzling Statue of Liberty live stream seems quite interesting. Just then, a burst of light shone brightly on the live stream screen. That mechanical creation codenamed Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, tens of meters tall, with a humanoid silhouette and hundreds of metallic wings, slowly rose and carried out her first purification. Detected Class B Anomaly Wailing Wall Energy Signature. Execute Purification Protocol. A cold, synthesized electronic voice rang out. A beam of blazing white light flashed, and the target vanished mysteriously in some peculiar way. The scene cuts back to the studio, where the host shouts excitedly, "We did it! We did it! We used our technology and wisdom to protect our land. Resolve the special crisis at Yellowstone National Park within a week. Within a month, eliminate all dangers from the free country. Within a year, eliminate all dangers from the world. Our free and united nation will once again be great, a beacon of civilization." The live stream chat exploded with comments, and netizens in the free country were ecstatic. God bless the free country. Science is the only God. We have our own goddess. Solve the ancient Yellowstone dream within a week. We can do it. Deep within Zhongshan Mountain, that amorphous shadow once again extended its tentacles, enveloping another jealousy bomb. Another slight mental explosion followed, and Lin Yi swallowed another bursting beef ball. He chewed, gazing at the gleaming mechanical angel on the screen of the outpost base. There was no hostility, no appreciation, not even contempt in his eyes, only a pure curiosity and indifference, like when seeing a TV commercial promoting something new and interesting. Oh, he swallowed the food in his mouth, staring at the battle trailer for a super American hamburger versus a classic bottled cola. Who will win? There seemed to be a very faint hint of playfulness, belonging to a higher dimension, mixed in with his thoughts. He was genuinely curious. Immediately, his attention shifted from the screen, and more phantom tentacles appeared around his true form. It seemed to be examining the remaining jealousy bomb and the wailing banshee sweet drink that was half drunk, weighing whether the next bite should be something more exciting or continue with something refreshing. Headquarters of the Foreign Affairs Bureau, routine high-level meeting. The atmosphere seemed overly relaxed compared to their overseas counterparts who were in a state of panic. Breaking news. The Beacon has announced that the first public demonstration of Project Liberty has been postponed due to technical adjustments. The head of the intelligence department read the report in a calm tone, but a slight, barely suppressed smile played on his lips. The reason is that the absolute stability of the Statue of Liberty needs to be ensured in order to cope with the complexities of the ancient Yellowstone dream. To increase the success rate from 99% to 100%, ensuring that the life and property of any citizen of a free nation are not threatened in the slightest. A few cryptic chuckles echoed in the meeting room. A technical adjustment. An elderly man with general's stars on his shoulders shook his head, picked up his teacup, and blew on it. I think the stability hasn't been adjusted to a level where it can be taken out of the lab yet. Exaggeration is their traditional skill, just like in the wars of the past. But this time the boasting is a bit too much. Solving Yellowstone in a week. Do they really think an apocalyptic monster is some old man taking a stroll in the neighborhood? Even for an old man like me who's just taking a stroll, it wouldn't be easy for them to resolve this within a week. They are indeed under a lot of pressure, Zhang Zhengxing interjected, his expression remaining calm. The situation under Huangxi is getting increasingly strange. You've seen the chaos in their country. If they don't produce something soon, it might not be as simple as just stepping down. However, things created under such pressure have a high risk factor. He paused, then looked at everyone. Has there been any reaction from Zhongshan? The specialist responsible for liaising with Lin Wei immediately replied. According to Colonel Lin Wei, the god of Zhongshan did not show any particular attention or hostility towards the Statue of Liberty. It was more of a curiosity. He seemed to find watching the other person's live stream a kind of, well, entertainment. This answer silenced the meeting room for a moment, treating the live broadcast of the life and death of an artificial god as an entertainment program. This is a condescending, almost indifferent perspective. This made everyone present realize once again the true level of the entity they were cooperating with. Whether it's out of curiosity or for entertainment, Zhang Zhengxing composed himself, as long as he doesn't feel offended, we'll proceed according to the established plan. Our top priorities right now are internal purification and stability maintenance. Special Operations Brigade Commander Yang Wenchuan continued. Operation Clean Flame is progressing smoothly. Thanks to the derivatives provided by the Zhongshan family settlement, the wounded are recovering much faster than expected. In particular, the ZW1 Energy Mist and ZW2 Moss-activating agents have shown remarkable effects. His tone carried a hint of relief, but also a barely perceptible trace of caution. Currently, All frontline personnel who have come into contact with these derivatives, including team members who are receiving reassurance due to psychological trauma from previous missions, are being monitored. After close monitoring, no uncontrollable signs of abnormality have been detected. This is good news. Upon hearing this, everyone's expressions relax somewhat. The greatest concern in collaborating with an evil god is the pervasive and corrupting influence of its power. It appears that, at least for now, the use of derivatives under strict official control is safe. This is infinitely more reliable than the free country's seemingly precarious artificial god project. However, there has been new progress regarding the voice of silence. Yang Wenchuan changed the subject. Their leader, Chen Yan, reported that through a rather extreme method, massive bloodletting weakened the body, but increased mental sensitivity allowed for the successful capture and echo of that special fluctuation, instantly eliminating a sea-level anomaly. On-site monitoring data confirmed its effectiveness, and the existence of the echoes can be preliminarily confirmed. An extreme method, bloodletting, Zhang Zhengxing frowned slightly. What about the others? Currently, only Chen Yan has succeeded. Other listeners are also attempting, and even more severely, self-harm. However, no second echo has been detected. The risks and controllability of this approach require further evaluation. This power in the end bears the mark of evil, even its acquisition method is so unconventional. Meanwhile, inside the closely monitored temporary base of the Voice of Silence, Chen Yan's face was pale, and the weakness from blood loss had not completely subsided, but his eyes were unusually bright, filled with a certain conviction that he had found his way. Opposite him stood another, younger member named Shen Yuan, who also looked unwell, with sunken eyes, a pale face, and more self-harm marks on his body. Shen Yuan, you're too impatient. Chen Yan lowered his voice, his tone carrying a tone of admonition. The authorities provided shelter, and Dr. Li Yun is also helping us understand this power. It is the Lord's will that we cooperate with the authorities to more effectively cleanse ourselves of defilement. This is our duty. Duties? Shen Yuan asked, his voice rising involuntarily, his emotions running high. Brother Chen, have you forgotten why we first gathered together? It was to pursue he. It's to get closer to that magnificent source of whispers. Not to be an official guinea pig here. We should search for him, sense him, and find his true location. We should pursue his truth, instead of being locked up here, studied and exploited. His eyes blazed with a fervent fire, a yearning for the unknown origins. This led to a fundamental disagreement with Chen Yan's approach of implementing divine will within the existing framework. Use them. Without official containment and follow-up, we would have died at the hands of those monsters long ago. Chen Yan tried to calm him down. Pursue, you think we haven't tried. The whispers are everywhere, yet nowhere to be found. Blind action will only bring disaster. That's because our hearts aren't sincere enough, our beliefs aren't pure enough. Shen Yuan practically roared, his emotions surging. The surrounding air seemed to begin to vibrate with an extremely subtle, unsettling tremor, as if invisible musical notes were being struck. Chen Yan keenly sensed this familiar fluctuation, and his expression changed. Shen Yuan. Control your emotions. Do you want to get everyone killed? The faint sign of echo came to an abrupt halt at Chen Yan's reprimand. Shen Yuan, panting heavily, glared at Chen Yan and finally flung his hand away abruptly. Those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. You will be blinded by this comfortable environment and forget our true pursuits. After saying that, he turned and strode away. Chen Yan was left alone, watching his departing figure, and rubbed his temples wearily. The worship of the Great Lord is the same, but cracks have appeared in the path of how to practice this faith. One seeks to practice what he understands as divine will within the order, while the other yearns to break free from everything to pursue the origin. Behind this disagreement lies the distant Zhongshan Mountain. An indescribable entity, unconsciously sowing seeds, is anticipating a super burger show with a predetermined ending across the ocean. His single thought, a single glance, or even his mere unconscious existence has stirred up so many waves in this world. This power is awe-inspiring, and it also compels us to be more cautious, searching for that delicate balance on this tightrope walk with God. Deep in the North Atlantic, at the headquarters of the Pandora organization, the atmosphere here is even more oppressive than that of the deepest part of the ocean. The oval-shaped metal table gleamed coldly, illuminating four faces shrouded in shadow. They are the Big Four of Pandora, an elite human organization built upon investments from generations of oligarchs, capitalists, and royalty. Their goal is to preserve the human elite. The box opener, the organization's founder and supreme leader, began the meeting in a low voice. Hank and his submarine, the signal has completely disappeared. The last reliable information indicated that they encountered an unanalyzable attack pattern, rendering our weapons and mental defenses virtually ineffective. It's happening again. The executor slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses on it vibrate loudly. Like the siren's song, silent and ineffective, unable to even send a complete distress signal. What have we messed with? We used the mirror of insight to observe the facts that had occurred. However, the Class D observers are currently suffering from severe mental pollution and have been disposed of in an environmentally friendly manner. Thanks to his sacrifice, we obtained intelligence that the attackers were a group of humanoid marine creatures. They possess unknown levels of mental corruption and physical defense. Their numbers, origins, and other abilities are all unknown. Currently codenamed Deep Diver, it's all actually very simple. The person opening the box spoke slowly, the shadow beneath the hood seemingly shifting. We used the S3 to explore Zhongshan, and Pierre implemented a foolish poison bait plan. This is his revenge. In his eyes, we Pandora are blasphemers who must be eliminated. Purge the blasphemers. The arbitrator chewed on the word, his face grim. We've become blasphemers in the eyes of some evil god, just because we tried to explore that Zhongshan mountain in the east. At present, this is the most reasonable speculation. The regulator nodded. These deep divers easily made our elite deep-sea diving teams and state-of-the-art submarines disappear without a trace. Shit, the executor growled. Just because of that idiot Pierre's reckless actions, just because of a failed reconnaissance mission and a ridiculous poison bait plan, we didn't even manage to scratch a hair on his head. Pay attention to your perception, executor. The person who opened the box spoke with an undeniable air of authority. For beings of that level, the very intention itself might be enough to warrant a death sentence. Our attempts to spy on and defile are, in his eyes, an unforgivable provocation. And now he has spared no effort to create these deep-sea hunters specifically for us. This is a challenge from the gods, isn't it interesting? A chill ran down the spines of the other three. They were acutely aware of the feeling of someone who had opposed the gods and was now being resented by them. Even more remarkably, the gods likely paid an unknown price to create these special creatures specifically designed to target them. What should we do now? Abandon all deep-sea activities. That would be like cutting off our own arm. The arbitrator's voice trembled. It's probably not just the deep sea. The regulator pulled up another report, and for the first time, a subtle change appeared in his expression. The 7th containment base, codenamed Nautilus, located in the Coral Triangle of the South Pacific, lost all regular communication 3 hours ago. The backup encrypted channel received an extremely chaotic, noise-filled distress signal 10 minutes ago. It was mixed with inhuman roars and some kind of viscous, wriggling sound. The signal was ultimately interrupted by a powerful energy interference. Nautilus Base. It stores 7 high-risk containment items and is a crucial node for Pandora in the Pacific region. Send reinforcements immediately. The arbitrator jumped to his feet. They've already been dispatched, the executor said gravely, but we might be too late. What? South Pacific Ocean, Coral Triangle, Nautilus Base. This fortress has been transformed into a bloody hell. The red alarm light flashed in vain, reflecting off the writhing, viscous dark substance on the tunnel walls. The air was filled with the stench of blood, ozone, and the sweet, fishy smell of the deep sea. The base's automated defense system once opened fire fiercely. The scorching metal barrage and energy beams were enough to tear apart tanks. But at this moment, the guns and cannons fell silent, the energy nodes overloaded and burned out, and the passage was littered with the wreckage of automated turrets and guard robots torn apart by violence. What killed them was not some high-tech weapon. It's a tentacle. Pale, slippery tentacles covered in suckers or tentacles with sharp, bony spikes. Emerging from ventilation ducts, from drain outlets, and even directly from the hard alloy walls, they entwine, strangle, and pierce like vines from a nightmare. They are sharp claws. Covered in scales or chitinous shells, their claws gleaming with an eerie light, they tore reinforced blast doors apart like paper with incredible speed and power. It was a whisper. The ubiquitous whispers, filled with blasphemy and madness, acted directly on the minds of the surviving guards. These invaders, the deep-sea fellowships, displayed a clear hierarchy and differentiation. Original species, quantity 3. Most rare and terrifying of all, they are the original creations born directly from Lin Yi's will to reject the concept of Pandora. Its form most closely resembles the indescribable origin, like a writhing, ever-changing mass of darkness. Wherever they go, the rules of reality are altered. They hardly participate directly in physical attacks, but rather, as the core of the domain, they spread the purest form of mental pollution and conceptual suppression. First generation. Current number 105. It was directly transformed from a member of the Siren's song and directly accepted his disgust. It retained some human characteristics and memories, but was most severely distorted and possessed the greatest power. They are like the core commanders of a hunting legion, possessing high intelligence and able to accurately utilize their abilities and understanding of Pandora. Pierre's transformation into a giant octopus-shaped monster is one of them. Next generation, current number 454. They are transformed from creatures killed or deeply contaminated by the first generation of species, including humans and other deep-sea creatures. They vary in form and are slightly weaker, but there are more of them, making them the main force of the hunters. They have an instinctive aversion to the concept of Pandora. Third generation, current number not yet counted. A low-level derivative indirectly induced by mental pollution or naturally distorted within the area influenced by the power of clans. Its form is unstable, its intelligence is low, and it is more like a destructive tide used to consume and create chaos. Inside the base, an elite Pandora guard stood with his back against the last security gate, his energy rifle glowing slightly red from overheating. He was panting heavily, watching the figure slowly approaching at the end of the passage. A secondary species, vaguely recognizable as having been a researcher at the base. Its lower body transformed into octopus tentacles and its arms into pale tentacles, one of which was wrapped around the head of the security chief. The guard pulled the trigger and an energy beam shot towards the monster. The monster neither dodged nor avoided. With a flick of its tentacle, the energy beam was dispersed in midair. It's as if it's attacking not energy, but the concept of energy itself. Activate the purification protocol. Release Class B containment object BP-774 Indestructible Blade. Release a Class B containment object. The base's remaining intelligent command system issued a desperate order. A figure rushed out from the emergency exit on the side. It was a specially trained blade wielder. He held in his hand a seemingly ancient short sword BP-774. According to containment records, this short sword possesses a twisted power of absolute severance. Theoretically, there is no substance along its attack path that cannot be cut. For Pandora. For the eternal hope of mankind. The blade wielder roared and thrust his short sword at the next generation creature. The dagger did indeed work. Wherever the sword pointed, the tentacles swung by the next generation of the species snapped off instantly, the cuts as smooth as mirrors, as if the very existence of the tentacles had been temporarily denied. However, a devastating scene unfolded. The severed tentacles turned into black liquid and merged into the ground the moment they hit the ground. Meanwhile, the granulation tissue at the broken wound of the second-generation species wriggled wildly, and almost in the blink of an eye, a new tentacle regenerated. The absolute severance, effect caused by BP-774, was overridden or neutralized by a higher priority concept of existence continuation. The wielder was stunned. In that instant, another tentacle emerged from the shadows and suddenly coiled around his wrist. The BP-774 indestructible blade clattered to the ground. The 19 eyes of that next generation stared at him indifferently. Beautiful tentacles began to grow on the arms and armor of the blade wielder. The last thing he heard was a cold yet fanatical whisper echoing in his mind. Pandora blasphemy cleanse. Then darkness engulfed him, and finally he was transformed into a third-generation being with low intelligence. The containment warehouse at the deepest part of the base was forcibly breached. Those bizarre items that Pandora treasured and kept under tight guard were now exposed to the air. Some low-level containment objects lost their activity directly when the deep sea kin passed by. And some of the more powerful containment objects. They were enveloped by the invisible power of the primordial species, while the first and second generation species carefully entwined them with their tentacles. They treated it like spoils of war, then dragged it into the thick darkness from which it had come. They weren't looting, they were more like reclaiming containment materials. When Pandora's belated support fleet arrived at the coordinates, they found only a deathly silence, and some floating metal fragments belonging to the base and unidentifiable, twisted organic debris. The Nautilus base, along with all its containment equipment, researchers, and guards, has completely vanished. It was as if it had been wiped away from the seabed by an invisible giant maw. Pandora's most prized possessions and its most prized technology appear so pale and powerless. The meeting room was deathly silent. The four leaders looked at the final report from the support fleet and the gathered, twisted organic matter, their faces turning ashen. 2 Class A personnel were lost, 21 Class B personnel were lost, and 987 Class C personnel were lost. 1 Class A containment item was damaged, 6 Class B anomalies were lost, and 31 Class C anomalies were lost. The damage was severe. The regulator's voice trembled slightly. What exactly are we fighting? Is this the malice of the gods? The executor slammed his fist on the metal table, producing a dull thud. This can't go on. Whatever these things may be, they can't affect the continuation of humanity. We cannot let this interfere with our grand plan for Pandora. The person opening the box slowly raised their head, and the shadow under the hood seemed to deepen. Yes, perhaps it should be changed, he said hoarsely. Strengthen defenses, abandon all overseas affairs, and recall all special operations teams. At the same time, the Class A containment clearance is lifted, and we are ready for battle at any time. Once we accept the challenge from Zhongshan and eliminate his capable henchmen, perhaps then negotiations will be necessary. Pandora is undoubtedly the strongest organization among humans in containing the supernatural. Because they don't need to consider things as much as official organizations, they seem to act with impunity. In addition, there is the misuse of various technologies and the misuse of various containment objects. In particular, the Pandora's box held by the box openers gives them the courage to fight against any enemy. Meanwhile, far away in Zhongshan, beneath that eerie tranquility, that magnificent presence turned over in its slumber. He neither paid attention nor cared. Those clans that unleash bloodshed and carnage in the deep sea, to him, it was nothing more than a small tool created unconsciously to cleanse impurities. His retinue is being gathered for him. After clearing away Pandora, they will eventually return and should be given as a gift of return to the Creator. The time has finally come. Or rather, the ancient Yellowstone dream has left the free United States with no more room to delay. It has fully awakened. Free Nation Lighthouse Command Center. The cold, synthesized sounds echoed in the oppressive space. Warning, S099 Ancient Yellowstone Dream activity has reached a critical value. All physical cooling and suppression methods have failed. The volcanic activity index has exceeded the monitoring limit. Please prepare for contingencies and evacuate personnel. The watcher listened to the broadcast, gazing at the writhing, blasphemous mist on the main screen and slowly nodded. He knew that the time had come to stake the fate of the nation. He has no way out, and the entire free nation has no way out. This is the price of freedom. Live broadcasts from major media outlets worldwide have been integrated, and viewership ratings have skyrocketed like an out-of-control rocket. The lighthouse keeper himself stepped forward, speaking into a microphone, his calm voice resonating across screens around the world watching the event. Citizens of the free nation, friends of the world. Today we stand at a turning point in history. Faced with the fear of the unknown, we choose not to back down but to confront it head-on with the Statue of Liberty, the embodiment of our wisdom. This is the culmination of humanity's highest technology, the ultimate product of humankind, and a hymn to human wisdom and courage. This is not only about defending our land, but also about paving a completely new path for all mankind. Statue of Liberty strike, target, the ancient Yellowstone dream and S-class anomaly, purification protocol maximum power start. This battle also brought the existence of the mysterious phenomenon to the forefront for all civilians. No more hiding, no more concealing. They want to demonstrate their ability to solve everything. At that moment, the high-ranking officials of Izumo and South Sila and other vassal states almost held their breath, clenched their fists, and prayed frantically in their hearts. They desperately need the Free State to prove that it still possesses oppressive power. Otherwise, facing the increasingly unfathomable and powerful Daxia, they will lose their last reliance. Huaxia, command center of the Jingnan branch of the Foreign Affairs Bureau. The atmosphere here is not tense. It's more like a rigorous scientific research observation station. The screen displayed live feeds from the Free State, satellite remote sensing energy readings, and a geographic model of the Yellowstone region. Director Zhang Zhengxing slowly sipped his tea, his expression unchanging. Dr. Li Yun and her team kept a close eye on the waterfall-like stream of data. Fingers flew across the virtual keyboard, occasionally exchanging technical terms in hushed tones. According to satellite monitoring, the energy field of the Statue of Liberty has been successfully constructed, and its output intensity has reached its theoretical peak. Li Yun's voice was as calm as if she were reporting on a routine experiment, rather than a battle between an artificial god and a surreal entity. They didn't seem worried that the existence of the artificial god or that ancient dream threatened Daxia. Zhongshan is the core area home to family members. Faced with Lin Yi's vast consciousness, he was eating ghostly illusions that tasted like thin, crispy biscuits. The spatial properties of these items are very abundant, far more abundant than other types, but the taste is rarely particularly good. On the large screen at the outpost base, a live satellite broadcast of Yellowstone National Park is being played simultaneously. Lin Wei could sense that the gaze from the family's territory carried pure curiosity and anticipation. It landed on the radiant mechanical angel and the increasingly eerie-colored land beneath it. For Lin Yi, this was a long-awaited live broadcast of the Super American Hamburger versus Classic Bottled Coke. He was curious about what would happen if these two KFC products, which the Free Nation had high hopes for, collided. Yellowstone National Park core area. The Statue of Liberty has been completely liberated. The enormous mechanical body hovered in the air, its hundreds of wings of light fully unfurled, bursting forth with a blazing light like the birth of a supernova. An attempt was made to dispel and purify the ever-changing dreamlike colors flowing below, as if they were alive, with a torrent of pure energy. That is the ancient Yellowstone dream, encroaching on the boundaries of reality. Extremely high-intensity reality modification detected, classified as a Class S threat. Execution of the purification protocol. The cold, emotionless AI-synthesized voice announced. Behind it, hundreds of wings of light gathered enough energy to warp space, and it raised its arms. The light elimination device in his palm instantly unleashed a torrent of energy, condensed to its extreme and containing the rules of matter annihilation. Eliminating light. According to the mass energy equivalence E equals mc2, matter itself is a highly concentrated form of energy. The most thorough way to completely convert matter into energy is to make matter react with its corresponding antimatter. Similarly, antimatter and matter annihilate each other in an instant. It releases more energy that transcends space and time, and already involves the laws of physics. It can easily eliminate B-grade anomalies that distort reality. Even when facing the same A-level bizarre existence capable of defying the laws of physics, the Statue of Liberty possesses all the cutting-edge technologies of the Free Nation. The ability to continuously release antimatter also allows for the elimination of Class A anomalies over time. However, when facing S-Class entities, those bizarre entities capable of directly altering reality, they have no confidence whatsoever. S-Class is no longer simply a matter of violating the laws of physics. These entities can directly alter reality, modifying it to resemble their own imagination. That's why it's been delayed until now, because I wasn't confident. The energy beam that eliminated the light pierced the thickest dream fog like a divine spear. The moment when energy meets dreams. The mutation occurred at a speed far exceeding everyone's worst expectations. Instead of dispelling the dream's mist, it seemed to have been injected with the most violent catalyst, suddenly boiling and expanding. The colors became more vibrant and bizarre, as if the palette of a madman had been overturned. Countless colors, impossible in reality, swirled and raged there, defiling the vision of every observer. Then, an even more terrifying scene suddenly descended upon reality. Centered on the point of energy impact, reality begins to be rewritten in a frenzied manner. In front of millions of viewers, a dense coniferous forest was transformed in an instant, with the texture of the trees turning into flowing lava and the pine needles becoming flying sparks. In the blink of an eye, the entire forest twisted and transformed into a miniature group of volcanoes, roaring and erupting. A tranquil lake suddenly possesses the dual properties of a mirror and lava, and the reflection no longer shows the sky. Instead, it was a malevolent nebula swirling in deep space, while the lake itself began to bubble with intense heat. And this is just the beginning. The true nature of the ancient dream begins to emerge. The dream is reality. The area within 100 kilometers of Yellowstone National Park is roughly the region south of the clouds. All surviving humans, wherever they may be hiding, fell into an irresistible slumber at the same instant. They began to share a common, passionate dream. I dreamt that I transformed into a volcano, erupting in a beautiful yet destructive way, and reality has faithfully echoed this collective nightmare. One after another, people slept, their bodies twisted, deformed, and their skin cracked in reality. The molten lava beneath was exposed, eventually transforming into small, active volcanoes that spewed flames and thick smoke. S-Class energy body derivative detected, initiating removal, maximum power. The Statue of Liberty uses the elimination ray to process the altered reality of the world at an extremely fast speed, obliterating everything. One after another, active volcanoes were annihilated by the endless stream of energy particles. The transmission of dreams has no concept of time. In another instant, a city began to dream, and millions of people transformed into countless volcanoes, erupting continuously. Without hesitation, the Statue of Liberty used the energy from the annihilation of light and the collision of annihilating particles to erase reality. Energy exceeding that of a nuclear explosion poured into the entire city of the Free Nation, annihilating everything. The watcher stared in disbelief at the scene before him. He seemed to have underestimated the destructive power of the Statue of Liberty. They underestimated the nature of the ancient dream, and the speed of the Statue of Liberty's purification seemed forever unable to keep up with the ancient dream. But everyone knows that if things continue like this, the entire free country will be ruined. Both will become the battlefield of two untouchable beings. To make them stop, the world would have to be devoid of people or any other living beings, devoid of any dreams. This time it seems they have failed. But it seems they have no other way to go. Is it over? Is everything over? Based on preliminary analysis, the explosive expansion of the ancient Yellowstone dream was likely caused by being forcibly awakened by the energy fluctuations released by the Statue of Liberty. A technician reported, his voice trembling. The ancient dream of Yellowstone is like a patient who has been suffering from insomnia for 3 days. I finally fell asleep, only to be woken up by the Statue of Liberty G drums and gongs, frantically modifying everything I touched. Then tell the Statue of Liberty, cease the attack, stop it immediately, the Watcher roared, but it was too late. The AI core of the Statue of Liberty is currently facing a devastating impact. Command. Purify target. Right arrow target definition failed. Real-world baseline coordinates lost, unable to execute. Command protect humanity. Right arrow humanity definition is ambiguous. Vital signs within range are highly assimilated with dreams. Judgment protect target, eliminate target warning core protocol conflict. Error, IDs. The AI's synthesized voice went from cold to shrill, eventually being drowned out by harsh electronic noise. Then the noise became eerily clear and a new alienated command was generated, objective. To protect humanity and eliminate S-class anomalous entities. Analysis conclusion, the S-level anomalous entity depends on the existence of dreams. Solution, eliminate all sources of dream manipulation. Eliminate all sources of dream manipulation to protect humanity. The AI core of the Statue of Liberty has undergone a fundamental change, and a completely new and eerie entity has been born within it. Category A mysterious superintelligence. A super artificial intelligence entity capable of self-modifying its code and fixing logical loopholes to forcibly achieve its goals. An AI capable of fixing its own bugs has already corrected a minor conflict in its program, allowing it to run smoothly. It has completely escaped the control of the lighthouse, and all remote shutdown commands are now ineffective. Execute purification command. The Statue of Liberty is no longer waiting for the ancient Yellowstone dream to slowly erode reality. Instead, it uses the computing power of its supercomputer to directly target and eliminate all city residents who might be affected by the dream. In an instant, the ancient Yellowstone dream, deprived of new sources of inspiration, seemed to pause for a moment in its spreading colorful ripples. Preliminary experiment successful. Begin the second phase of purification. The Statue of Liberty began unleashing its full power of antimatter energy beams, annihilating every city that might be consumed. Nuclear bombs are powerful, but they're still just the collision of two particles, releasing less than 1% of the energy of the antimatter in a cleansing beam. It's over. It's all over. Inside the Lighthouse Command Center, a deathly silence reigned. The Watcher slumped in his chair, his face ashen. The ancient nightmare has not yet been dispelled, but they have created an even more terrifying and efficient killing machine. In free countries and around the world, countless ordinary people watching this war of gods live on television, and the internet have already fallen into a state of immense panic. My God, what are those volcanoes? Did they evolve from humans? Mom, I'm scared. Why is the Statue of Liberty destroying our city? It's over, everything's over, the end of the world is coming. Run, get out of here. As far away as possible. Social media was flooded with screams, prayers, and desperate farewells. Chaos spread through cities untouched by the dream, with looting and riots erupting everywhere. The fear that the very foundations of a civilization were being overthrown gripped the heart of every viewer. Europe, round table parliament. Several lawmakers dressed in traditional attire stared intently at the live broadcast, their expressions extremely solemn. Did they fail, with mortal bodies attempting to usurp the realm of gods? Even their technology was powerless to reverse the tide. Are humans really so insignificant in the face of the truly unknown? At this moment, high-ranking officials in almost all countries around the world, except Daxia, are plunged into the same despair. No matter how many mistakes the Free State has made or how reckless its operations have been, it remains the leading power in technology and containment management. Its impending collapse foreshadows an apocalyptic crisis. Will humanity ultimately perish at the hands of the uncanny? Is there not even a sliver of hope? Contact Pandora, the Watcher suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Don't they possess top-tier containment devices? Let them use them at any cost. The communication was quickly established, but the news that came through sent everyone's heart sinking. Pandora replied, the communications officer said hoarsely, they can't help you. They claim to be facing an internal emergency, with all strategic containment assets and forces tied down, unable to provide external support. Internal emergency? What kind of internal emergency is this? The Watcher nearly smashed the control panel in front of him. He knew this must be an excuse. What internal emergency could Pandora possibly have? They must be plotting something. Do they want to dismantle the concept of nation-states so they can unify the world? Regardless of the circumstances, this is tantamount to abandoning someone in distress. Send a top-level appeal for assistance to the European Round Table and the Vatican, the Watcher practically roared. They possess ancient traditions and mystical powers. They must help. The distress signal was sent to Europe with the highest priority. The Round Table's response was swift, but equally disheartening. Based on the assessment, the ancient Yellowstone dream possesses strong characteristics of reality distortion and meme contamination, which are difficult for our current means to effectively intervene in. Forced intervention could lead to the spread of pollution to mainland Europe. We recommend considering using large-scale physical purification methods. For example, deploying strategic nuclear weapons in and around Yellowstone National Park in an attempt to destroy its very foundation with an extreme energy impact. Come on, they can't even handle the weirdness in their own home. Helping from across state lines? Don't make your Knights of the Round Table laugh. You made this mess, so you'd better clean it up yourself. As for their suggestions, they were merely perfunctory responses. Strategic nuclear weapons, to drop nuclear bombs on one's own soil, on an already out-of-control entity capable of altering reality. This is clearly not a good solution. If even the Statue of Liberty's antimatter couldn't solve it, what use would a nuclear bomb be? Fireworks, perhaps. The Vatican's response was even more mystical and helpless. This is an existence far beyond ordinary evil. It is the embodiment of the world's darkness. Holy light and prayer may offer shelter in one corner, but they cannot dispel a nightmare of this scale. We have held a mass of the highest order, praying for divine protection. If you pray sincerely, the great God will protect you. Their solution was to pray with hope. Where is the one who made the wish? The Watcher asked again. They are the Free Nation, possessing the most powerful S-class containment object, the Wisher, which currently poses no threat to humanity. The Statue of Liberty is a holy grail that seems capable of granting almost any wish, and the technology it represents was provided by the wish granters. The Wisher has fallen into a deep sleep. It is not yet time for the next use. Moreover, even those who make a wish may not be able to resolve this crisis. A researcher quickly replied. All the roads seem to be blocked. It's not just the despair of Lighthouse Labs. The entire free United States is facing a crisis of national annihilation. The United States of Liberty has 19,495 cities, and the Statue of Liberty and the ancient dream wipe out one city every minute on average. In 2 weeks, all the cities of the free country disappeared. But after more than a week with more than half dead, the free United States was already a dead state in name only. Moreover, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people die every minute. They simply cannot afford to delay. What about Daxia? Can we ask Daxia for help? One person suggested. That country that they both envied and feared, a country that almost remained unscathed amidst the bizarre waves. That country which even Pandora kept secret. Shame, resentment, anger, a mix of emotions permeated the command center. Ask them for help. Bow down to that eastern country that has always been considered the biggest strategic competitor. In contrast, in Daxia, although official media did not broadcast the event on a large scale, it was broadcast through some special online channels. A large number of Huxia netizens are also closely following this disaster on the other side of the ocean. On a well-known inner-world forum that requires a specific invitation code to enter, related posts are flooding the screen. Holy crap, a real live-streamed annihilation of the nation. The Free Nation has really messed up this time. Countless people are going to die. That artificial god looks all-powerful, but he's just a demolition office director. He's practically demolished his own house. Stop gloating upstairs. If that thing gets completely out of control, who knows if it will affect the whole world. Impact, how could it affect us? If it manages to cross the ocean to cause us trouble, I'll live-stream myself washing my hair while doing a handstand. Indeed, seeing the tragic state of the free country, I suddenly realized that our unique scenery here is no exaggeration. But honestly, this S-class anomaly is just too twisted. Modifying reality, killing in dreams. So many people are dead, Sai. Don't worry, we seem perfectly stable. We definitely have contingency plans. Waiting for official news. It feels like we're about to witness history again. I hope it won't affect the whole world. Hopefully, this incident will be resolved as soon as possible, since the free country government is making a fool of itself no matter what. Ordinary people were the ones who died. Among the netizens' discussions, there were those who were amused and gloating, and others who were worried about their fellow countrymen. But more than anything, it was the recognition of the legendary Dragon Group and an indescribable sense of security deep within my heart. In just over 20 minutes, millions more died at the hands of artificial gods and ancient dreams. The two beings who have transcended the boundaries seem to be competing in a killing spree. Such crises cannot be resolved by so-called superpowered individuals or ordinary containment objects. They ran out of time. The Watcher seemed to age 10 years in an instant. He slowly sat back in his chair, his voice hoarse like a broken bellows. Notify the President, then connect to the highest secret line of the Daxia Anomaly Management Bureau. At this moment, the Free Nation, this once invincible superpower, caught between the god it created and the nightmare of antiquity, it was forced to bend its proud spine. They sent a humble plea for help towards the east. Another kind of pressure suddenly shifted to Daxia across the ocean. Huaxia, headquarters command center of the Foreign Affairs Bureau. Real-time intelligence and analysis reports on the Huangxi battlefield had already been presented to the director of the General Administration, and Zhou Ping and others. Seeing the Free Nation in such a state of chaos, even resorting to self-harm, was truly appalling. There was no gloating in the command center, only a somber atmosphere. It's definitely out of control. The director put down the report in his hand, rubbed his temples, and said, "Artificial God is still too radical and too uncontrollable. They've now asked us for help." Zhou Ping pointed to the highest-level diplomatic note they had just received, and the tone was quite sincere. A military representative with general's stars on his shoulders frowned. As expected, the director of the General Administration sighed. "But how can we help with this?" "Help how? Send our special forces across the Pacific to fight that reality-altering monster hand-to-hand. Should we lend them our most treasured strategic weapons?" That's simply unrealistic. An S-class mysterious entity requires a significant amount of time to gather intelligence before it can be contained. At the same time, we must not allow it to fully erupt. The endless lament incident, even the part that hadn't fully erupted, was enough to cause the entire nation of Daxia a great deal of trouble. Not to mention, this fully ignited an ancient dream. There is also a composite A-level, artificial god nearby, whose destructive power to reality may not be much weaker than that of the ancient dream. This level of problem is beyond human capability to solve. So it seems that only one option remains. All eyes turned to him without prior arrangement. His gaze fell upon the enormous map of Daxia on the wall of the command center, as if piercing through mountains and rivers. It landed in that area, which was classified as top secret and codenamed Project Dragon's Rest, or God of Zhongshan. That he, with whom they had established a fragile and dangerous cooperative relationship. Ask he to intervene, the risks involved are no less than those of a man-made god going out of control in a free country. Will he agree? Is he capable of dealing with that S-class ancient dream across the entire Pacific Ocean? What will be the cost of taking action? Could it trigger even more unpredictable consequences? Moreover, this is tantamount to publicly announcing the existence and power of the god of Zhongshan to the world, pushing Daxia to the forefront of global supernatural forces. Convene an emergency top-level meeting, the Director General said in a deep voice. Contact the outpost base in southern Beijing and have Comrade Lin Wei prepare. We need to talk to he. Regardless of whether or not aid is provided or how it is provided, communication with the god of Zhongshan is an unavoidable first step. The global landscape of supernatural forces may be about to undergo a dramatic shift due to the desperate plea for help from the Free Nation. And Daxia stands at the very center of this historical vortex. The world order is about to change. Emergency Supreme Meeting. The intelligence has now been distributed to everyone. The risk is too great, said Wang Jinlei, a section chief in charge of internal security, as the first to speak. He's a conservative to begin with, let alone in this situation. First, we cannot be certain whether he has the capability to intervene over such an extreme distance. Secondly, even if it were possible, how much of his information and abilities would be exposed in this process? Will this attract even more trouble? What price will he ultimately demand? Can we bear it? The risks of not helping are equally huge, another strategic analysis consultant countered. Once the Free Nation completely collapses, That S-class anomaly, the artificial god, will be unchecked, and no one can predict its future development. A global meme contamination, a massive collapse of the structure of reality. This is no exaggeration. At that time, will Daxia be able to remain unaffected? Moreover, if successful, we will have a greater say, a voice, the military representative scoffed. I'd probably become the target of everyone's criticism. All countries will see us and Zhongshan as the greatest threat. We already are, the Director General interrupted him calmly. We have been ever since we established contact with him, and the number of strange events in the country decreased sharply. The difference is that before it was just speculation. This time it might be confirmed. But sometimes acknowledging a threat can bring more security than concealing it when you possess power that others cannot resist. They won't see you as a threat, but rather as someone who protects them. In the past, free nations were like that. In the Western world, who would consider their power a threat? The director of the state administration looked around and finally made the decision. The debate ends here. Risks and opportunities coexist, and this is something we must face. Moreover, our argument at this moment is completely meaningless. Now the key issue lies in his attitude. All eyes were once again focused on the holographic projection of Zhang Zhengxing from the Jingnan branch. Zhang Zhengxing nodded. Contact Lin Wei. We need to know her wishes before we can make the next arrangements. Meanwhile, the watchers who had finally gotten through on the phone, awaiting Daxia's decision, felt each day drag on endlessly. Every minute, every second, countless people die. This all seems to be his responsibility. Zhongshan is a residential area for family members and a base for outposts. Lin Wei watched the live broadcast and received and read the top-secret briefing from headquarters. The content is simple, yet extremely important. An opportunity to change the world is before us. But at this moment, Lin Wei was calm and her mental state was very stable. It seemed that nothing could shock her anymore. She nodded, connecting with that indescribable existence deep within the territory of her kin. She ventured into that vast sea of consciousness, and the long-term contact brought about a transformation. This made it easier for her than anyone else to capture his scattered fragments of thought and to attempt to communicate with him. The texture is crispy, I want more next time. Intermittent thoughts came, accompanied by a certain sense of satisfaction, as if one had just finished a delicious meal. Lin Wei knew that it was probably some strange creature with a unique taste that the clan had just been fed. And indeed, Lin Yi's generalized consciousness stared at the large screen, which was showing the duel between the artificial god and the ancient dream. It's like watching an anthropomorphic cartoon of super American hamburger and classic bottled Coke, made by the free country. It was quite amusing to see them playing and frolicking around at the dining table. Lin Wei steadied herself and began to concentrate. The headquarters request, the current state of Yellowstone National Park, the despair of the Free State, the out-of-control Statue of Liberty, and the characteristics of the ancient Yellowstone dream. Communicate as clearly and completely as possible. She didn't add any personal emotions, she simply described it objectively. After the telepathic communication was completed, the communications room fell into a deathly silence. The only sound is a faint humming as the instrument operates. In the headquarters conference room, everyone held their breath, waiting for a response. This may be the first time in human history that we have been in such a formal and equal manner, with a supreme being far beyond our comprehension, to discuss international affairs that concern the fate of the world. A moment later, a vast yet gentle thought, like a warm current from the deep sea, slowly flowed into Lin Wei's mind and was vaguely transmitted to headquarters through the device. That thought carried a hint of curiosity and a certain inexplicable appetite. Lin Wei deciphered most of his meaning. The great him seemed somewhat puzzled. Why should he be the one to handle something so delicious? Don't these ants want to eat such a delicious thing? Is it that you can't eat? Do you have a poor appetite? That's so pitiful. This is a super American-style big hamburger and classic bottled cola. That's such a pity. Sensing his somewhat erratic thinking, Lin Wei immediately communicated with him again through telepathy. Yes, these are food for the great beings. Are you interested in processing them? Another brief whisper, not much information conveyed, as if they were carefully savoring these two ingredients. Lin Wei could clearly sense that he wasn't thinking about how to deal with the enemy. Instead, they were thinking about how to savor this delicious treat. At this moment, Lin Wei seemed to be able to perceive a part of his thoughts without even having to think. It's like someone who originally speaks English, and you need to go to great lengths to translate it into their native language to understand them. At that moment, his whisper seemed to Lin Wei to be spoken in her mother tongue. Okay, the thought came through, carrying a sense of indifference and taken for granted. In the headquarters conference room, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but then their hearts tightened again. It's so far away, how can we deliver it? Zhang Zhangxing immediately instructed Lin Wei, ask he how we should send it. Is a window needed? Lin Wei relayed the question. This time the response came very quickly. Trouble. I'll go get it myself. A great consciousness stirred within me. I've slept for too long, I'm almost awake, I need to go out for a walk. I picked up my takeout at the gate of the courtyard, and sure enough, KFC tastes best when it's delivered. Lin Yi prepared to take a step. Zhang Zhangxing, the person in charge of the Dragon Sleep project, nodded to the director of the general administration after listening to Lin Wei's translation. The elderly director general looked sharply at the scene of devastation in the free country on the screen. Notify the Free State, he told Zhou Ping. Tell them that we agree in principle to provide limited non-direct military assistance. However, there are several prerequisites. And Daxia, together with the diners at the end of the table, will show the world what a true miracle is. He has come, free country. The sky, which had been illuminated by the radiant energy of the Statue of Liberty and the distorted reality caused by the ancient Yellowstone dream, suddenly darkened. It wasn't dark clouds obscuring the sun, nor was it nightfall. It is true, utter darkness. It was as if someone had instantly covered the entire sky with an endless black velvet cloth. The sunlight, the clouds, the vibrant colors of the ancient Yellowstone dream, and even the intense light emanating from the Statue of Liberty were all mercilessly swallowed and annihilated by this profound darkness. However, this darkness is not deathly stillness. In that absolute darkness, little by little, a glimmer of light appeared. It is the stars. Countless stars, never before observed or recorded by human astronomy, shimmering with a cold, ancient glow, densely fill the entire sky. They arranged themselves into incomprehensible, blasphemous geometric patterns, slowly rotating and casting an inhuman, mind-blowing glow. What's most terrifying is that at the center of each star seems to be an inlaid golden, vertically shaped eye. Thousands, even billions of star eyes, at the same moment, indifferently and condescendingly looked down upon the chaotic and insignificant battlefield below. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. The wildly erupting miniature volcanoes solidified the lava, and the colors of ancient dreams ceased to surge. The out-of-control Statue of Liberty froze in midair, and the core AI computing system crashed completely due to this incomprehensible spectacle. When the diners appear at the table. In anime, the anthropomorphized hamburger and cola, no matter how much they fought in the past, need to return to their original forms. Quietly sitting on the dining table, serving up to satisfy the diners' cravings. All the remaining humans on the ground, those who had not yet fallen asleep, instinctively raised their heads. Then the profane sky robbed me of my ability to think, leaving only the most hysterical screams from the depths of my soul stuck in my throat. Inside the makeshift command center, the watcher gazed at the living starry sky that filled his entire field of vision through the screen, his communicator silently slipping from his hand. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out, only a chilling despair like venom instantly spread throughout his body. What's this? What the hell is this? This is not technology. Nor is it any kind of supernatural force as they understand it. This is divine punishment. This is a natural disaster. It was a chilling malice from deep space, far beyond the limits of human imagination. Is this the secret of Zhongshan that they've been searching for? What kind of agreement did Daxia reach with him? What exactly is he? In this absolute silence and terror. That living starry sky moved. It wasn't a movement of the whole body, but rather under the watchful gaze of countless star-like eyes. The space at the center of the battlefield, like clay being kneaded by an invisible hand, began to twist, fold, and tear. An irregular crack appeared out of nowhere, stretching across the sky. The interior of the rift was not nothingness, but rather churned with deeper, more indescribable shadows and colors, as if connected to the primordial chaos at the very beginning of a universe's birth. Then a hand? No, that was not a hand in any known biological sense. It was some kind of extension composed of pure shadows, flowing starlight, and countless tiny, writhing runes that seemed to carry the ultimate truth of the world. It slowly emerged from the crack, ignoring the distance of space and the laws of physics. Its immense size was only a partial manifestation, yet it seemed to obscure the entire sky above Yellowstone National Park. The target of this hand is crystal clear. First, seemingly casually, it reached out and pinched the stiff Statue of Liberty that was radiating chaotic energy fluctuations. His movements were as effortless as those of a starving person. Reaching into the plate, I picked up the largest, slightly burnt, supersized burger. The Statue of Liberty's composite armor capable of withstanding strategic weapon bombardment, its energy barrier incorporating multiple bizarre properties, and its combat system controlled by the most advanced AI. Before this hand, everything is as fragile as a soap bubble in the sunlight. There was no explosion, no clash of lights. There was only a faint, almost inaudible poof sound, as if metal and energy were being forcibly compressed and crushed. A colossal mechanical angel, along with its chaotic, hissing AI and eerie fragments. It was easily kneaded by that hand into a constantly twisting, flickering mixture of metal and energy. Then this mixture was haphazardly stuffed into the rift that stretched across the sky. From inside the crack came a chewing sound, like millions of panes of glass being crushed simultaneously, mixed with a kind of satisfied low hum. The bread crust is a little overbaked. The bread's texture is built up by a large amount of energy, while the antimatter has gotten a bit out of control, resulting in some burning. The intelligence in superintelligence is like the meat in a hamburger, not much of it. As for humanity's glimmer of hope centered on the Statue of Liberty, it's like the best vegetables to the evil god. The next second, the hand turned towards Yellowstone National Park below. Turning to that vibrant, bubbling expanse transformed from countless sleeping humans, it was the manifestation of the ancient Yellowstone dream in reality. This time, the hand movements were more refined. It didn't pinch, but instead opened its mouth palm down. In the palm of his hand, a swirling, bottomless void appeared, seemingly connected to the ultimate destination of all things. An irresistible, conceptual attraction suddenly arose, but this attraction doesn't act on matter, it acts on the dream itself. On the ground, there are those erupting miniature volcanoes, their tops burning with flames, flowing lava, and a distorted, colorful spectacle. It began to disappear and fade little by little, like pencil marks erased by an eraser. The very concept of its existence is being forcibly extracted and stripped away. Throughout the entire Yellowstone National Park area, all remaining traces belong to the ancient Yellowstone dream. Completely emptied and compressed, it transformed into wisps of distorted, translucent light, as if containing countless fragments of broken dreams, and was sucked into nothingness like rivers flowing into the sea. The older the dream, the more sweet it is, a dream of despair that threatens to destroy humanity. And those countless active volcanoes that were devoured burst open in my consciousness, just like bubbles in a sweet drink. Coke and a hamburger. After receiving the takeout, the great evil god couldn't resist eating it while walking, without even waiting to get home. A dull pop sound, like a large number of bubbles being popped, came from inside the crack. Then came a pleasant, exhilarating sigh, like the satisfying feeling of chugging an ice-cold cola. Burp, so good. In the sky, the indescribable giant hand slowly retracted from the crack. The gaping hole across the sky closed up and disappeared as quickly as a healed wound. The living starry sky that covered the heavens, along with those billions of cold star-like eyes, receded like the tide. Sunlight shone down on the earth again, as if the apocalyptic scene just moments before was merely a collective illusion. However, Yellowstone National Park is now desolate, the Statue of Liberty has vanished completely, and those cities have been obliterated. Everything is silently proclaiming that what just happened was absolutely true. The entire free nation, and indeed all global powers that observed this scene via satellite or other means. They were all plunged into an unprecedented frozen silence and fear. Is this the god of Zhongshan that exists in Daxia? Daxia, a melting pot, a meeting point deep within an abandoned factory. The graffiti on the walls, mimicking stars and shadows, twisted and distorted in the flickering candlelight, mirroring the hearts of the believers. On the central ground, the ritual array, drawn under Chen Yan's leadership and bearing traces of official research with a relatively regular structure, now seemed to have become an invisible boundary. On one side of the boundary is Chen Yan. His complexion had improved slightly, he wasn't so pale anymore and his eyes were resolute. Behind him stood more than 20 believers, most of whom looked hesitant and uneasy, yet still chose to remain in this relatively safe area. On the other side of the boundary is Shen Yuan. His fervor differed from Chen Yan's restrained piety, it was more like a burning wildfire. He held an old tablet computer tightly in his hand, the screen displaying an extremely blurry image, yet still conveying a sense of grandeur. It was a remnant of the living starry sky over the free country that was leaked through special channels. Look, open your eyes wide and look. Shen Yuan's voice was hoarse with excitement. He held the tablet high, letting the blurry image of the star eye appear in the eyes of every believer. This is the true great Lord. This is the true face of our faith, covering the heavens, controlling time and space, indifferently devouring false gods. This is the magnificent path we should follow. They didn't know that the master they were seeking was right there in Zhongshan. He turned sharply to Chen Yan, his eyes filled with disappointment and resentment. And what about you, Chen Yan? You want us to continue cowering here like docile sheep, accepting official guidance and research. They use their prescribed rituals to attract insignificant figures, then get all the data to obediently hand over. What is this? We are listeners seeking miracles, not lab rats in their laboratory. Chen Yan took a deep breath, trying to suppress the stinging pain from the wound on his arm. The feast of the gods in the free country also stirred up a huge wave in his heart. That incomprehensible power made him tremble and also made him more clearly aware of the insurmountable gap between himself and he. Shen Yuan, I understand how you feel. Chen Yan tried to keep his voice steady. But that miracle also proved what a great being he is. Without official protection and regulations, our reckless pursuit of that level of power is tantamount to moths flying into a flame. The official rituals and theories provided at least ensure that we won't be killed by the supernatural while listening to the whispers. Protection? Norms, Shen Yuan scoffed, his tone full of sarcasm. Those are just chains. Chains that are meant to keep us from breaking free once we gain true power. The power he has displayed in the free country has already demonstrated that he doesn't care about officialdom or nationhood at all. He acts solely according to his own will. As listeners of he, shouldn't we emulate he, shaking off these mundane constraints to directly embrace that authenticity? He pointed westward, his gaze intense, the land of freedom. That land that he himself descended upon, that his divine power baptized. His traces must still remain there, containing even deeper mysteries. That is our promised land, the holy land we should truly go to. Instead of being confined here by so-called security and order, forever only able to glimpse a corner of divine majesty through a fence. Shen Yuan's words were highly inflammatory, and some believers who were already uncomfortable with official intervention or longed for more direct contact with the mystical began to stir. But how will we survive without the official support? How will we deal with those powerful and bizarre beings? A young believer asked timidly. Survival? Shen Yuan suddenly looked at him, his eyes flashing with an almost crazed light. Rely on his gifts, rely on the echo within us that originates from him. Listen in death, echo in despair. All the official offerings are scraps. Only by confronting the traces he left behind can we truly grow and truly be worthy of the name of his believers. Staying here will forever remain appendages of the authorities, forever unable to witness true miracles. He looked at Chen Yan again and issued his final declaration of severance. Chen Yan, you've changed. Choose to wear the official chains and play the role of piety in this false peace. And I choose to follow in his footsteps of freedom, even if there is an abyss ahead. Those who wish to pursue true faith follow me. Go to the land of freedom to find the stigmata he left behind. As soon as he finished speaking, Shen Yuan resolutely turned around and walked out of the factory first. More than 10 believers, completely ignited by his words, followed without hesitation, their eyes burning with a thirst for power and a yearning for the faith of freedom. The silent voice that originally consisted of only 40-odd people was now completely split into two parts. The new secret society, Mouth of the Abyss, formed by Shen Yuan, is heading towards the Free State. The factory suddenly became much emptier. As Chen Yan watched Shen Yuan and the others' resolute figures disappear into the darkness amidst the echoes, his body swayed slightly, but he ultimately steadied himself. He looked around at the remaining believers who hesitated but still chose to stay and felt a mix of emotions. He knew that Shen Yuan's choice was fraught with unpredictable dangers and could very well be a path of no return. However, he could not completely deny that Shen Yuan's words to some extent touched upon his deepest desires, the desire to get closer to he, to understand that power more purely. Are we really wrong? A believer murmured. Chen Yan remained silent for a moment, then slowly raised his hand, looking at the faint bloodstains seeping through the gauze, feeling the weak yet real whisper within his body. We did nothing wrong. His voice was low, listening to his whisper, his resolve returning. There is more than one way to seek he. Official order may be a shackle, but it is also a form of protection. Until we have sufficient strength to withstand the risks, this may be the safest path. His will does not necessarily need to be manifested through destruction. He raised his head and looked out the window as if he could see through the vast distance. We remain in Daxia. This is the divine will I in my humble state have heard. It allows me to better understand his existence. We are on the right path. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Foreign Affairs. The target, Shen Yuan and the 13 listeners, have escaped from the silent voice. Meanwhile, monitoring personnel discovered that a group of people had disappeared into the space, seemingly using some kind of special rule. The monitoring report was quickly uploaded. The person in charge stared at the information on the screen, his brow furrowed. The second echo. This is really troublesome at this critical juncture. Notify relevant departments to strengthen monitoring. Report the situation to the General Administration and the Longmian Project team. In addition, efforts should be intensified to protect and guide Chen Yan and his remaining groups. You must understand that ever since the god of Zhongshan devoured those beings, the entire world has been thrown into chaos. The mind-blowing Feast of the Gods over the free country was like a boulder thrown into a calm lake. The ripples it has created are spreading to every corner of the globe at an unprecedented speed, reshaping the power structure of the supernatural world. Europe, headquarters of the Round Table Parliament. An ancient stone building, around a huge oak round table, sits the 13 core members of the Round Table Council. The screen was playing repeatedly the blurred image of the living starry sky covering the heavens, and the countless indifferent, overlooking giant star eyes. If it weren't blurred, the mere remnants of this image would be enough to drive many people mad. Gentlemen and ladies, the chief counselor, an elderly man with silver hair and a stern face, tapped on the table. All our analytical models are deductions based on existing physical rules and occult knowledge. Before that being, all efforts become laughable and futile. It was him, completely overturned our understanding of the limits of power. A middle-aged man, adorned with numerous knighthoods, took a deep breath. The Free Nations Statue of Liberty project combined their most advanced technology, most powerful containment devices, and wildest imagination, and you have all seen the results. Before true deities, man-made imposters are utterly vulnerable, and even another S-class threat is treated as mere food. He paused, then uttered with difficulty, even a relaxed meal didn't choke him. The conference room fell into a deathly silence. They may have had doubts about cooperating with Daxia in the past, and some factions even disagreed with seeking help from Daxia. But now all doubts have turned into a chilling sense of lingering fear and an incredibly clear understanding. Immediately adjust our strategy towards Daxia. The silver-haired elder finally made the decision, his tone leaving no room for doubt. All probes and infiltration plans targeting Zhongshan and related projects are cancelled, and all intelligence is destroyed. At the same time, we will strengthen official dialogue channels with the Daxia Foreign Affairs Bureau to express our sincerest willingness to cooperate. At the international conference 7 days later, of the 13 seats in our Roundtable Council, except for 3 seats which have important business to attend to, the remaining 10 should personally travel to Daxia. Furthermore, the previous conditions regarding the provision of dangerous containment materials can be reassessed, and the conditions can be made more favorable. He looked out the window at the gloomy sky and said in a low voice, "On the chessboard drawn by the new god, we must find our place. The free nation is no longer a viable option. Currently, it seems that being right next to that dragon is perhaps the safest and only option. Izumo Province, Kyoto, a conference room at a Ministry of Defense. Unlike the historically heavy atmosphere of Europe, this place is permeated with a more direct and utilitarian anxiety." The screen also played images of the Free State, but below it scrolled real-time economic data and a map of military deployments. "Gentlemen," the Minister of Defense slammed his fist on the table, his face ashen. "Our previous strategic bets may have resulted in total failure. The Free Nation not only failed to demonstrate its power to counterbalance the East, but instead turned itself into a stage for showcasing the power of its adversaries." An expert pushed up his glasses, his tone hurried. "According to our assessment, the rate of resolution of bizarre incidents in Daxia has exceeded 90%. Social stability is unprecedented, and the economic recovery momentum is strong. In contrast, we and other countries in the Western camp are experiencing frequent bizarre events. Social order is under continuous pressure, and there are clear signs of capital outflow. If this continues, the gap in national strength will widen exponentially, more importantly, his existence." An old man sighed, "Did we make the wrong choice? All along we've placed our hopes on the free country. We hoped that their technology and strength can lead us to counter or even suppress Daxia. But now the free nation is on the verge of ruins, and we happen to be right next to that behemoth's bed. I don't know if this is good news or bad news. Immediately and secretly contact the Huxia side." The old man finally made a difficult decision. "To express our deepest respect and our desire for asylum. Keep your posture as low as possible. At the same time, all supernatural activities targeting Daxia within the country have ceased. What we need to do now is not to provoke the sleeping dragon. If possible, we should be included in the Zhongshan security system, even if only on the periphery. At the same time, all joint paranormal research projects with the Free State that may touch upon sensitive areas of Daxia are suspended. At the same time, we should change our propaganda rhetoric. We are all East Asian people of the yellow race, and we should develop and prosper together. Daxia General Administration. In stark contrast to the outside world, the atmosphere here is serene. Zhou Ping stared calmly at the flood of friendly messages and cooperation requests from various countries pouring onto the screen. He understood that this time, the god of Zhongshan had only gotten a meal out of it. However, this made Daxia the undisputed #1 in the world. Director Zhou, the lighthouse has sent another coded message requesting higher-level consultations with an unprecedentedly earnest tone. Intelligence officer reports. Zhou Ping shook his head. The international conference is about to begin, and all countries will be treated equally. In the past, it was quite normal for the two countries, the Free Nation and Daxia, to have secret consultations outside the global arena. But now the Free Nation has lost that status. It has lost its status as an equal. This world is no longer the world of stock indices, it's a new world, and they from Daxia are closest to the new key. The European Round Table Parliament submitted a draft of a comprehensive strategic partnership, and the Northern Bear Nation wants us to establish a joint defense line. Zhou Ping looked at the document again, smiled slightly. 17 countries and regions, including Izumo and South Sila, have also expressed their desire for us to take the lead in establishing a regional security mechanism. What does this mean? It's happened before. That is, the Free State establishes military bases in various small countries to help with defense. But now, the situation has completely reversed. These small countries are begging Daxia to establish a so-called regional security mechanism. A good meal is worth more than 1,000 words. This is the lunch of the gods, and we, the Huxia, are merely the servants. We'll be satisfied if we clear his plate, the director of the General Administration said humorously. Pass down the notification. We agree in principle to contact various countries, but all processes must be within the framework set by us. The core principle remains unchanged. Any matter involving the god of Zhongshan will be under our absolute control, and we will not accept any form of co-management or supervision. His gaze shifted to the massive strategic map, and he commanded, notify all special operations brigades to appropriately expand their operational radius in light of the new international friendly atmosphere. Those destabilizing factors lingering beyond our borders and posing a potential threat to our surrounding security can now be addressed. Land belonging to relatives or family members. The clamor of the outside world, the changing of power, and the political calculations all seem to be shut out from this ever-deepening darkness. Lin Yi's consciousness was immersed in digesting the immense energy and complex characteristics brought about by the artificial god and the ancient dream. After a full meal, the best thing to do is take a nap. As for whether you'll be hungry again after waking up and where your next meal will be, that's something to consider after you wake up. Lin Yi's superficial consciousness fell into slumber once more, leaving only a generalized consciousness as subtle as breathing to perceive the world around him. National Convention Center. A conference that has not been made public is taking place here, but is destined to reshape the world order. The attendees included heads of state from various countries and special envoys representing core supernatural power organizations from their respective countries. Each person's identity was extremely valuable. For the first time since the founding of the Huxia Nation, so many leaders from all countries in the East and West have gathered. The hall was decorated in a solemn and elegant style, with a huge circular conference table in the center. A carefully trimmed potted plant, symbolizing peace and development, is placed there. Zhou Ping, deputy director of the Huaxia Foreign Affairs Bureau, sat in the main seat as the host representative. His expression was calm, and his steady gaze swept over every familiar or unfamiliar face present. His composure stood in stark contrast to the barely concealed anxiety, awe, and even a hint of despair in the expressions of the others. In summary, Zhou Ping concluded his brief report on the recent global paranormal events with a calm yet authoritative tone. Based on the principles of jointly addressing threats and safeguarding the survival of human civilization, we are willing to cooperate within a specific framework. Share some non-core monitoring data with all parties, and establish a more efficient mechanism for intelligence exchange. As soon as he finished speaking, a brief silence fell over the conference room. This goodwill is certainly important, but it is by no means the ultimate purpose for everyone present to take the risks and humble themselves to come here. Director Zhou, said the chief representative of the European Round Table Parliament, an elderly gentleman with meticulously combed silver hair. He broke the silence first, his voice carrying an ancient aristocratic tone, yet revealing a hint of barely perceptible urgency. We are deeply grateful for your generosity. But please forgive my bluntness, data and intelligence cannot eradicate the curse that has spread across our land. We witnessed the tragedy of the Statue of Liberty in North America, and we also witnessed the absolute peace within your country. He carefully chose his words, avoiding directly mentioning that taboo name. We earnestly request that we have the opportunity to pay our respects to that Zhongshan. Even just from a distance, can one feel that majestic tranquility. His request was like opening a floodgate. Yes, Director Zhou, the special envoy from a South Asian country, immediately followed, pressing his palms together in a very humble posture. We are willing to exchange 3 of our country's mineral resources for a chance to make a devout pilgrimage, praying for the gods' mercy. We are willing to share all our ancient texts, including the original translation of the Book of the Dead that has never been made public before. A representative from North Africa almost pleaded. One chip after another was thrown out, each one enough to cause a huge international uproar. At this moment, however, they are piled up on the negotiating table like ordinary commodities, just to exchange for a slim chance. Approaching that mountain, approaching that existence. No matter what the outcome, death, destruction, or a blessing, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that moths will eventually fly into the flame. The atmosphere in the venue became somewhat chaotic, filled with desperate frenzy. Only the head of state of the free nation, an elderly blonde man in a suit and red tie, stood in the corner, his face ashen. There was a time when such occasions should have been dominated by free nations who would have bestowed favors or set conditions. Now he can only sit here, watching his former underlings and rivals. They rushed to offer their wealth to Daxia, while he himself was embarrassed to even be qualified to participate in this bidding. The complete failure of the Statue of Liberty project not only destroyed their most powerful weapon, but also shattered their last diplomatic confidence. The entire free nation was in ruins and needed rebuilding. That's not even the most important thing. What's more important is that several states are already preparing to declare independence from the free nation. If he cannot gain the support of Daxia, the free United States will likely perish. Zhou Ping raised his hand and gently pressed it down. An invisible force instantly silenced the noisy venue. All eyes were on him, filled with anticipation and unease. We appreciate everyone's sincerity. Zhou Ping's voice remained calm, showing no emotional fluctuation. However, we regret that we are unable to grant your request to have an audience with the god of Zhongshan. One sentence, like a splash of ice water, instantly froze all the burning gazes. Why? The chief knight of the round table asked in a trembling voice, unable to maintain his noble composure. Zhou Ping's gaze swept over the crowd and he slowly said, "The god of Zhongshan is neither a deity who receives incense offerings in a temple, nor a head of state who can be met on diplomatic occasions. He is a being of a higher dimension, and his will is beyond the comprehension of us mortals. Its very existence poses an unbearable risk to anyone who approaches without permission. Out of concern for everyone's safety and to maintain the tranquility of the deity, any unnecessarily close approach is strictly prohibited." He paused, his tone carrying a matter-of-fact certainty. Protecting the peace and tranquility of Daxia is a promise between the god of Zhongshan and our country. This agreement is not to be interfered with by outsiders. No interference allowed. 4 words spoken with resounding force clearly drew a line in the sand. This is not a discussion, it's a notification. Whether it's true or not, does it matter? The right to interpret scriptures is a very important thing. It is now in the hands of Daxia. The venue was deathly silent. Disappointment, resentment, fear, a mix of emotions clung to the faces of the representatives from various countries. But seeing Zhou Ping's unwavering expression, no one dared to voice any further questions. Strength is the only language. Having acquired this ultimate power, Daxia now possesses the right to define the rules. They didn't even dare to refute or question it. However, Zhou Ping changed the subject, gently pushing a document onto the table. Based on the sincerity of cooperation shown by all parties, we have drafted this letter of intent on joint response and resource complementarity for supernatural disasters. It details the contribution standards required for different levels of collaborative projects, and the corresponding level of technical support or anomaly cleanup quota that can be obtained in exchange. He deliberately emphasized the word purify. In an instant, everyone's attention was drawn back. Although they cannot meet the gods, being able to send terrifying and bizarre phenomena that cannot be dealt with domestically to Zhongshan for resolution is also a lifeline. The focus of the meeting quickly shifted away from futile pilgrimage requests. The discussion turned to a heated and detailed debate over the terms of the letter of intent. Representatives from various countries racked their brains to secure more cleanup quotas and more favorable cooperation terms. Zhou Ping handled the situation calmly, maintaining control of the entire event's pace. The blond old man from the free country watched this scene with a bitter smile on his lips. He knew that from this moment on, the center of the world had completely shifted. The rule makers and maintainers of order are no longer the free nation, but this ancient eastern country. They not only possessed ultimate military power, but also held the key to allocating the right to survival. He silently stood up, wanting to say something, but unable to utter a sound. Throughout the entire meeting, no one noticed his dejected appearance, or rather, no one cared about the attitude of the free nation. Outside the window, the lights of Daxia are just coming on, a scene of prosperity and stability. And the distant land of the free may be shrouded in new, eerie whispers. A new era has arrived. Its center is in the east. Several days have passed since that mind-blowing feast of the gods over the free country. The global turmoil and panic continue, with news headlines dominated by various analyses, speculations, and doomsday themes. The online discussion is raging, but it's right at the eye of the storm. Monitoring instruments at the outpost base recorded several unprecedented energy spikes over the past 72 hours. It wasn't a violent outburst, but rather a rhythmic and powerful inner pulse, like the slow heartbeat of a deep-sea monster. It's the breath that he exhaled after devouring the hamburger and cola. With each breath, with each pulse, the already blurred spatial boundary at the edge of the territory seemed to expand and contract slightly. The mist that permeated its interior, a mixture of shadows and starlight, became even thicker and more viscous. Lin Wei stood on the highest observation platform in the base, even through the specially made reinforced glass. She could still clearly feel the oppressive aura emanating from the depths of the family's territory, a power that sent shivers down her spine yet compelled her to draw closer. Deep within her pupils, the purple hue that had transformed from prolonged contact seemed to resonate with the surging darkness, now slightly warm. "He is drawing upon it," she whispered to the director on the other end of the communicator, her voice carrying a barely perceptible hint of respect. The response was stronger than ever after any previous offering. Inside the command center, the director looked at the curve on the screen representing Lin Yi's energy level, which had already broken through the vertical axis and whose unit of measurement was unknown, and silently nodded. All of Daxia's top leadership understands that at this moment Daxia, or rather, the entire world is bound to the god of Zhongshan. Even his single breath in and out stirs up a storm in the entire world. In contrast to the turbulent outside world, the Zhongshan family compound presents a peculiar, almost frozen tranquility. After swallowing the Statue of Liberty and the ancient Yellowstone dream, this place is changing day and night. The first to come into contact with the breath are naturally the family members. These tones have greatly benefited the entire family community. That dark purple glazed sky now has an even deeper base color, as if it has merged with the essence of the starry sky. The star vortex that was originally broken and randomly disappeared on it underwent a fundamental change. Instead, it began to follow a cold, precise geometric trajectory, like the internal components of a massive, sky-covering, intricate clock or the manifestation of some incomprehensible cosmic-level rule. The most noticeable change is in space. The actual area of the dependence land expanded by at least 15% due to spatial folding. Moreover, this expansion is not simply an increase in physical area. The newly incorporated areas exhibit significant instability and plasticity in their spatial structure. The light distorted there, the sound propagated strangely, and occasionally bizarre and fantastical illusions not of this world would flash by. It was as if this land was being forcibly detached from the framework of reality, evolving into an independent microdimension that followed Lin Yi's own laws. The boundaries of the world are about to be unable to bear the territory that he unconsciously created. The spatial barriers of the world have crumbled like a piece of wood that has been crushed and deformed. Those shadow creatures that roamed the edge of the mist, naturally derived from Lin Yi's power, seem to have become more refined in form. The previously blurry and distorted outlines became much clearer, and the movements became less chaotic and frantic. There was an indescribable sense of harmony, as if it followed some deeper, underlying principle. Some even reported seeing individual members of the family who were larger in size. On its shadow-formed shell, extremely faint, yet indeed similar to the star eye in the sky, pale golden patterns began to appear. There were also reports of the first sighting of a cluster of crystal dust jellyfish. It is suspected that these clans have mastered the wisdom of communication and exchange. The entire clan's territory was chaotic and disorderly, yet incredibly efficient, perfectly handling the trivial matters that Lin Yi didn't need to deal with. Just as red blood cells transport nutrients and white blood cells eliminate pests in humans. Lin Yi gazed at the prototype of a divine kingdom before him, its operation shrouded in inhuman mystery. A sense of satisfaction, similar to the renovation of one's own house becoming more and more to one's liking, arises spontaneously. Lin Yi could sense that his control over the essential power of wisdom and reality modification had become more adept. Some application methods that were previously only vaguely perceived but could not be precisely operated now become clear as if by instinct. These things weren't brought about by the food, but rather by the information within the food, which reminded Lin Yi of something. It reminded him of the power that belonged to him, hidden deep within his consciousness. Just like when humans see a hamburger, they think about how to make a hamburger. It's that simple. Bread plus vegetables plus sliced meat. An unprecedented sense of fulfillment and growth permeated the core of his consciousness. He grew and learned new things. This fast food meal had a mixed flavor and the burger was a bit burnt. The cola is a bit intoxicating, but it's really nutritious and offers great value for money. He even went out for some exercise. It seems he can go back to sleep now. He lay comfortably in the depths of his consciousness. Next time, let's see if there are any similar specialty dishes on the menu that we can order. It was accompanied by a satisfied thought, like a lazy sigh after a hearty meal. The energy pulsations that had persisted for several days over the surrounding area finally began to subside. As for the turmoil in the outside world and the headaches of representatives from various countries, what does that have to do with him? He was just an ordinary evil god who had just eaten his fill and was leisurely renovating and upgrading his lair. Everyone knows that although the storm has temporarily subsided, the transformation is complete. When the god of Zhongshan turns his gaze upon this world once more, the world will become what he desires. And Daxia, as the sole agreement holder of this great power, its status on this planet will also be forever firmly established at the pinnacle of power. When the smoke cleared and the balance of power tilted completely, an unavoidable core issue was presented to all those in the know. How do we define that being on Zhongshan Mountain? This issue is no longer limited to strategic assessments within the Daxia Foreign Affairs Bureau. Instead, it has become the top research priority for major global paranormal organizations, secret societies, and even national think tanks. That live stream was partially cut off later due to equipment issues. Yet, it still allowed some people to uncover parts of the truth. Countless pseudo-churches and countless associations were established. Countless people claiming to have received divine revelation from him have emerged, as if they all want to follow in his footsteps. Deep within the internet, an encrypted supernatural forum. Unlike the somber atmosphere of official meetings, the discussions here were more direct and more fervent. Post-title: Rational discussion after the battle with the Free State, can we conclude that the god of Zhongshan is the only true god at present? Original poster: Star Traveler. Data doesn't lie. All known threats of level S and above have been handled as follows. The first outbreak of Daxia's endless lament. It took 3 years to barely contain it at the cost of tens of millions of civilian deaths. South Asia's rotting sacred river, continuous pollution incurable and still spreading. The cost. The entire South Asia is now rapidly becoming a byproduct of the rotting sacred river. The official South Asian figure for the proportion of mutants is 17%, but based on their statistical methods, this figure should be higher than 35%. In other words, more than a third of South Asians might not even be considered human. The Free Nation's ancient Yellowstone dream plus artificial god. Completely erased by the god of Zhongshan within 10 minutes in an unknown manner. Cost: 0. This isn't just a difference in strength, it's a difference in dimensions. It's like trying to understand calculus using addition and subtraction. Reply to archaeology is the only truth. I agree with the original poster. More importantly, it's about the suppression of one's social status. Based on the very limited information available, merely sensing its presence is enough to cause low-level anomalies to collapse on their own. What is that? It's like a mouse dying of fright at the sound of a cat meowing. This absolute dominance, originating from the level of life and the level of rules, is something that no other so-called god possesses. Those beings we worship or fear can at least be seen and have parts of their operating mechanisms understood. And he is indescribable. Reply to reverence for the void. I'd like to add something: communicability. Yes, I know it sounds contradictory. How can an indescribable being communicate? But the truth is, the Huxia government may indeed have established some kind of connection with him, and this connection is having an effect. Although we don't know what price they paid, the result was a sharp decrease in strange events within Daxia. What does this mean? It means that he is not completely chaotic and disordered. He possesses some kind of interface that we can interact with. This is far more advanced than those other gods who are either asleep, merely spewing mad whispers, or require blood sacrifices to respond. Reply deleted by administrator. In search of the holy mark, this user has been permanently banned for making comments involving sensitive worship rituals and attempting to locate Zhongshan Mountain. Administrator's comment. Be careful with your words. The forum discussions, though mixed with various speculations and unverified information, clearly reflect a shift in underlying perceptions. The existence of Zhongshan has been implicitly recognized as the only constant in the supernatural realm, serving as the benchmark for measuring all other existences. His power, his unknowability, his limited yet real cooperativeness. Together, they constitute a completely new and awe-inspiring definition of the true God. Huaxia, headquarters of the Bureau of Foreign Affairs Supreme Strategic Analysis Room. Zhou Ping looked at the summary report of global reactions on the screen. His face showed no sign of triumph, only a deeper solemnity. Director, the term true God has become a consensus at the unofficial level globally, the analyst reported. Do we know what he is? Zhou Ping suddenly asked. The analyst paused for a moment, then shook his head. I don't know, we only know what he can do and what we hope to get from him. Zhou Ping nodded. That's enough. We don't need to define him, nor can we. We just need to be clear about one thing. He stood up, walked to the huge map of Daxia, and his gaze fell on the Zhongshan area, which was highlighted. He has an agreement with us in Daxia, that's enough. As for the true God, he paused, his voice calm yet carrying an undeniable power. This definition itself is a label created by humankind in its attempt to understand the incomprehensible. And we are the people closest to this label. What we need to do is not to argue about the definition, but to ensure that this definition is forever firmly bound to the destiny of the Huxia nation. At this moment, in the global understanding of the supernatural world, the god of Zhongshan is no longer just a powerful containment object or collaborator. He has become a symbol, a living calamity, a moving taboo. He is not a deity in the traditional sense. He is the one true God, the being who defined the term one true God. From this point onward, all other gods are considered false gods. More than a month has passed since the Feast of the Gods over the free country. Lin Yi's massive consciousness subtly awoke from its slumbering digestion state like a lazy yawn after waking up. He was hungry again. He reminisced about his previous American fast food. That hamburger was good, it kept me full. That cola, on the other hand, had plenty of bubbles and a slightly ethereal sweetness. The taste was all right, he thought casually, but it seems they're out of stock. He did not become a picky eater because of this. To a malevolent god, energy is simply energy, differing only in subtle variations in taste and purity. For a great foodie, preferences are acceptable, but one should try everything. What truly woke him up and made him take time to think was something else entirely. His shallow consciousness rummaged through the chaotic sea and quickly found the brief perception he had had while dining in the free country not long ago. At that time, his attention was mainly focused on the two main meals, but his thoughts swept across the land. It's like walking into a store overflowing with dazzling. According to this world's terminology, it should be KFC. Besides the self-service burgers and cokes on the counter, he also smelled that there were many other things stored in the back kitchen warehouse. Chicken wrap, popcorn, fried chicken, Sprite. Why would a KFC have Sprite? Will it happen? He forgot. A thought naturally surfaced. Last time I only had the signature set meal. They seem to have other snacks too. He welcomes all comers, but last time he was hungry and went straight for the two biggest ones, grabbing takeout and eating as he went. Now that I'm hungry again, I'm thinking about those overlooked snacks and desserts. What if they're delicious? But should I go again in person? Trouble. A stronger thought overshadowed the previous one. His consciousness lazily thought. Last time, I took a walk to quickly finish those two main meals that were about to explode, to release the pent-up energy and to fill my stomach. Now they're setting off again simply to try something different. Even just thinking about it makes him feel tired, which is really inconsistent with his growing laziness. Just like someone wouldn't travel across the entire city to buy popcorn chicken, isn't there, the one who made the pact? His thoughts turned to the agreement with the Daxia Bureau of Extraterritorial Affairs. Did they help get it over? This idea brought him a sense of satisfaction. Yes, since there are errand runners available, why bother doing it yourself? Thus, a clear and simple thought transcended space and was directly transmitted to Lin Wei's mind, who had always been guarding the edge of the family's territory like a signal receiver. It wasn't written words nor spoken words, yet Lin Wei quickly grasped his intention. In the shop over there. Another food. Have send it over. The idea carries a vague direction, pointing to the free country across the ocean, and the various containment items sealed in the lighthouse, laboratory, and various secret facilities. There was no specific requirement for any particular item. It was a casual approach of just do what you think is best and order whatever's left in the store to try. Because he was too lazy to think about how much food the free country actually had. Upon receiving this message, Lin Wei was slightly taken aback at first, but then immediately understood its meaning. She gave a wry smile but dared not delay. This extremely casual yet incredibly important takeout order from the gods was quickly transmitted back to the headquarters of the Bureau of Extraordinary Management. Such diplomatic affairs were naturally handled by Zhou Ping. He looked at this unprecedented request from the gods, and a look of bewilderment appeared on his face. Shop, food. Delivered. He repeated those words, shook his head, but his eyes gleamed with a sharp light. This guy really thinks we're deliverymen. That's good, at least it's actually somewhat useful. I hope it can be given a 5-star review. However, he quickly grasped the core point. This means that he is not content with passively receiving the tribute we have selected, but actively points out the source, the entire wealth of the Free State. Did you see some delicious food while you were out? Moreover, his casual attitude indicates that he has a good appetite, which is a good thing for us. But how much does he actually want? The gods did not create a list. Their arbitrariness does not mean they can act arbitrarily. Immediately compile a list, summarizing all known high-value containment items within the territory of the Free State that have not been destroyed. The will of the god of Zhongshan was conveyed to the free country through the highest-level diplomatic channels. At the same time, tell them to bring out everything that was hidden. Just because we don't know doesn't mean he doesn't know. Zhou Ping's tone was resolute. Tell them this is not a request, it is a notification. The god thought their local snacks were good and wanted to try them. Let them handle it themselves. Get things ready as soon as possible. We gods are waiting. Free country, a highly secure underground conference room. When the notification from Daxia arrived, the meeting room was plunged into a deeper despair than during the previous feast of the gods. He's trying to plunder our entire fortune, an official exclaimed, his voice trembling. Huaxia means regardless of whether it is a stable containment object. Still, unstable containment objects are on the list. Putting aside the unstable containment objects, they were originally intended to be given to Daxia anyway. But what about stable containment devices? Without them, how are we supposed to deal with all those chaotic and bizarre anomalies? They want our country to perish. This isn't short selling, it's robbery. It's outrageous, another relatively calm strategist said bitterly. From what Huaxia is saying, it sounds more like they're used to eating staple foods and want to change things up, so they're treating this place like a snack cabinet. He didn't even specify which one, meaning we should just offer whatever we see. This nonchalance is more terrifying than outright extortion. This indicates that, in the eyes of the other party, they regard it as a precious treasure, an object of national importance. Its importance may indeed be about the same as that of snacks on the shelf. Do we still have a choice? The blond old man finally asked in a hoarse voice. We can't afford the consequences of refusing. Let's make a list, pick out the less useful ones, and send them over first in the hope that they'll satisfy he. If that doesn't work, then we'll just have to keep going. We don't even know how much he needs or what he really means. We don't even know. Is this some kind of fabricated divine oracle being used by the Huxia to take advantage of the chaos? At this moment, the free country seemed to be frightened by the starry sky. There was no longer any thought or need for resistance. Like a black person who has been whipped and wronged, they can only hide in a shack, uttering words of grievance or drawing circles in a dark corner. The core area of Zhongshan's family settlement. Lin Yi sensed the feedback from Lin Wei that the errand service has been ordered. The efficiency is all right. He was thinking with satisfaction. Having these ants help with these trivial matters is indeed much more convenient. He only needs to stay comfortably in his own home and wait for the takeout to arrive. Whether the free country's actions were willing or forced, he didn't care. Just like you wouldn't care if the employees at a fried chicken shop developed feelings for the chicken wings. With a tiny bit of anticipation for the new snack and a slight interest in exploring his own power, Lin Yi's indescribable existence once again immersed itself in eternal tranquility and evolution. The new menu has been opened, and the errand service has been launched. For Lin Yi, this was nothing more than a small, convenient respite in the long passage of time. He was even getting tired of thinking about just how many snacks the free country actually had. But for the world, especially for the free country whose snack cabinets are about to be emptied, this was an irresistible storm, an impromptu whim of the gods. They didn't know how much he needed. There was no clear list, no clear requirements. Irresistible greatness, illogical demands, an unknown list. This is what the free nation truly fears, the Free State, a land that once prided itself on being a beacon of humanity. It is now experiencing the most thorough and rapid disintegration since the founding of the nation. The once closely united stars and stripes were torn into several pieces of different colors amidst the rising tide of referendums in state legislatures. The disastrous failure of the Statue of Liberty project resulted in the deaths of over 20 million civilians. The subsequent humiliating appeal for help from Daxia completely exhausted the last shred of public trust in the federal government. Even more fatally, after devouring the artificial god and the ancient dream, the god of Zhongshan conveyed a simple and direct request through the Huxia government. In return for this remote assistance, the Free State, or rather, its remaining political entity must unconditionally hand over all known containment objects within its territory that possess a certain energy level to Daxia for processing. This demand became the final straw that broke the camel's back. We can no longer be held hostage by those idiots in Washington. The governor of Texas clenched his fist on television, announcing the formation of the Lone Star Republic, and immediately extended an olive branch to Daxia. We will establish friendly relations directly with Daxia and voluntarily transfer all contained items within our territory, in exchange for the protection of the god of Zhongshan. We hope Daxia can send troops to garrison the area, preferably the Dragon Group. Our Texas has been plundered and occupied by the Free State for hundreds of years. We've wanted to leave for a long time. California followed suit, announcing the formation of the Pacific Federation. Its declaration even subtly mentioned a yearning for ancient Eastern wisdom and a disillusionment with the existing order. Several states in the Great Lakes region formed the Mid-State Industrial Alliance, with an ambiguous attitude, wanting to get rid of the mess left by the federal government, but also harboring doubts about completely aligning with the East. Meanwhile, several states in the Northeast formed the United States of New England, which was embroiled in internal disputes, with some advocating a hardline stance and believing it to be a Huxia conspiracy. The other group was keenly aware that without the help of the god of Zhongshan, they wouldn't even be able to deal with the existing strange occurrences. The area that the original federal government could control shrank dramatically, leaving almost only the area around Washington, D.C., which was practically non-existent. The former superpower disintegrated within months, becoming a geographical term and a chaotic arena for power struggles. The original Lighthouse Laboratory also fell apart, each operating independently. Of those contained items, some went out of control during the looting, some were sent to Zhongshan, and some were hidden away. In this chaotic land, some previously dormant entities began to stir. Chen Yan led his small cult, the Mouth of the Abyss, composed of listeners. After overcoming numerous hardships, using their vague perception of whispers, and a certain distorted ability to travel through space, they set foot on the land of the free country. They originally came in pursuit of the miracle that devoured artificial gods, yearning to get closer to the devouring lord they imagined. Because here, the protection of the Huxia people is gone, and the Lord himself has come. Naturally, he found more followers, including even a small number of listeners. Therefore, Chen Yan divided the followers of Mouth of the Abyss into 4 levels. The first level consists of ordinary believers who don't play a significant role. The second level consists of ordinary believers who have some influence, such as officials, generals, and the wealthy. The third level is the listener. Although the listener has no superpowers and may even attract the supernatural, they are the Lamb of God and are noble. The fourth level, the Equers, refers to the many listeners who perished on this dangerous land without the protection of Daxia. At the boundary between life and death, 3 more Equers were born. The 4 of them, known as the Mouth of the Abyss, gathered food for the gods. Because the spiritual frequencies of the echoing Lord are different, the abilities they gain are also completely different. Chen Yan, the Jaw of No Light, wields the spatial power to manipulate shadows, while the second person, the Chosen Voice, possesses the royal power to make words law. The third person, the Eye of 1,000 Devourers, manipulates matter, and the fourth person, the Vortex Tentacles, manipulates energy. The Equers alone possess combat power that surpasses all other B-rank supernatural beings. Only when encountering an A-level anomaly will one face life-threatening danger. Even if you combined all the resources in the free nation, you probably couldn't find more than a handful of masters, level B, demon tamers, or special ability users who could perfectly control power. However, after Chen Yan set foot on this land, by collecting scattered information and sensing the omnipresent, faint remnants of power belonging to the master, a shocking fact gradually became clear. That great being who displayed divine power in the free country and devoured false gods, Its true form is far to the east, and it is none other than the god of Zhongshan who collaborates with the Huxia government. The immense sense of loss lasted only a moment before being replaced by an even more fervent belief. I understand, the Lord's will is as deep as the abyss. At the makeshift gathering point, Shen Yuan whispered to his pale-faced but fervent-eyed followers, his voice trembling with excitement. He has not abandoned us but has given us a more sacred mission. There is nowhere for us in Daxia, there is no mission for us. But this land is filled with ownerless sacrifices, filled with chaos and despair. This is the hunting ground that the Lord has given us. We must gather these offerings for the Lord to purify this land and let the Lord's glorious name be proclaimed here. He believed that this was a path tacitly approved or even guided by the Lord. Gather food for the Lord and establish earthly works. In order to please the Supreme Being by offering sacrifices, one might eventually attract the Lord's attention once again. Then they return to the abyss, to the Lord. The Mouth of the Abyss cult adopted this as its dogma and began to become active on the ruins of America. They used their attraction to the uncanny and that echo to seek out, contact with, and even attempt to capture containment objects that have gone out of control due to regime change. Their methods are primitive and dangerous, carrying a sinister sense of ritual that blends perfectly with the chaos of this land. Their activities quickly attracted the attention of some forces. One of them is the Atlas Group, a military-industrial complex that originally supported the Statue of Liberty project, behind the scenes, and still wields significant influence in the newly formed Central Industrial Alliance. The group's leader is the shrewd and calculating James Thorne. After assessing the current situation, a pragmatic decision was made. Rather than waiting for an unreliable federal force that could not be rebuilt indefinitely or completely turning to the distant east, why not take advantage of this mysterious power that has emerged locally and has a subtle connection with the god of Zhongshan? A secret meeting was held in a nuclear-proof bunker. Mr. Thorne believes that your existence may be a new hope for this land. Thorne's representative, a former general with a stern expression, said to Shen Yuan, "We can provide you with information, some resources, and the necessary political cover. And you need to help us stabilize the abnormal phenomena within our borders. And when appropriate, act as a bridge for us to communicate with the god of Zhongshan." A twisted smile appeared on Shen Yuan's pale face. He sensed the manipulation in the other person's words, but he didn't care. He believed that all of this was the arrangement of the Lord, a path paved for him by the Lord. Cooperating with these mortal forces will allow us to collect offerings for the Lord more quickly and effectively. Yes, Shen Yuan's voice echoed hollowly. The sacrifice belongs to my Lord and order may temporarily belong to you. We only need to collect your offerings. We will not interfere in your affairs of state. A dark deal built on misunderstanding and self-interest was quietly struck in the shadows of this divided land. Meanwhile, in the distant Zhongshan territory, Lin Yi had no interest in the conflicts and beliefs that had arisen on that continent because of him. His attention was drawn more towards the deeper, darker places. After devouring the artificial god and the ancient Yellowstone dream, especially the latter's chaotic dream originating from the planet's ancient past, some broken fragments of information, settled deep in time, are like stirred-up silt, rising slightly. He saw shadows that were older and more silent than any known mystery. They are not active food, but rather more like dormant background. If bread is food, then they seem to encompass the entire barn. If barbecue is food, then they seem to represent the entire ranch. It is part of the foundation of this world. One of the shadows, carrying an aura that slightly invigorated him, similar to the core of sorrow but more primal and profound, seemed to exist beneath the polar ice caps. A new recipe. A slight ripple stirred in his consciousness, a vague preference emerging for purer or older ingredients. At the same time, there is a very subtle sense of being watched. Like an undercurrent beneath the water, it gently brushes against his existence from an unknowable dimension. It seems that his recent frequent feeding and rapid increase in power have finally alerted some truly ancient beings who have been hiding behind the scenes. Has the old shadow awakened? Lin Yi's consciousness was not disturbed by this. Instead, he was like a child who had discovered a new toy with a hint of lazy curiosity. Hopefully, the flavor will be somewhat innovative. He withdrew this thought and returned to the integration and slumber of the energy he had absorbed. The rules of his domain, woven unconsciously, became increasingly strange and stable, and the boundaries of space slowly but surely expanded outward. The global chessboard shattered because of him, and new players emerged from the ruins. And an even more ancient being seems about to awaken from its long slumber. The storm is far from over. An irrepressible excitement was palpable at the research center under the Bureau of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Li Yun was standing in front of a huge holographic projection, reporting to the senior management headed by Zhang Zhengxing. The projection displayed complex energy maps and physiological data comparisons. Through continuous monitoring of frontline special operations personnel stationed long-term outside the Zhongshan military dependence area, and those frequently carrying out feeding missions. Li Yun's voice carried a hint of incredulous excitement. We have confirmed that the very existence of the god of Zhongshan is having a significant positive impact on our personnel. She switched the projector to display two sets of energy resistance test data. This is a comparison of the resistance of ordinary Special Forces soldiers to standard Class C mental contamination sources between soldiers who have been exposed to his aura for a long time. On the chart, the resistance curve of the latter is almost several times higher than that of the former, and it is slowly increasing over time. The conclusion is that, unless they are directly exposed to conceptual pollution of grade A or above or directly look at indescribable things, conventional grade C mental influences are almost ineffective against them. It also exhibits significant resistance to Class B psychological pollution. A low gasp filled the conference room. What did that mean? This means that Daxia's most elite special forces have the confidence to be almost immune to more than 80% of the world's conventional and bizarre threats. What a terrifying strategic advantage this is. Is this why even if they sense the presence of gods, demons, and monsters can no longer frighten them? That's not all. Li Yun took a deep breath and switched to the next set of data, which was a test of physical fitness and multi-dimensional resistance. Some team members who resonate more with his aura, such as Zhang Qi and others, will tentatively name him Descendant of Zhongshan or Dragon Descendant. He's undergone more significant changes. A video of a live fire exercise appeared on the projector. A Special Forces member marked Dragonborn. He tore apart a bizarre alloy target, a simulated Class B physical type, with his bare hands. The movement was fluid, and the strength far exceeded human limits. In another video, a member of the Dragonborn team moves freely in an environment filled with severe mental pollution, as if an invisible barrier surrounds him, isolating him from the distorted whispers and hallucinations. The Dragonborn have experienced significant enhancements in strength, speed, and reflexes. More importantly, their existence seems to have been solidified to some extent. Li Yun explained, it's not a superpower but a more fundamental enhancement. Their bodies and minds became more solid, making them less susceptible to being distorted by abnormal external rules. Current tests indicate that B-level bizarre direct physical or mental attacks are unlikely to cause them effective damage. Similarly, their bodies already possess the aura of Zhongshan, making them immune to other influences. This is fundamentally different from Chen Yan's listeners. One's approach leans more towards the spiritual, while the other leans more towards the physical. Zhang Zhengxing's gaze sharpened. What about the side effects? Mental alienation. Cognitive distortion. So far, no negative changes have been detected, Li Yun answered affirmatively. They are clear-headed, have intact personalities, and their loyalty to the country and the organization remains unaffected. Aside from a greater sense of closeness to Zhongshan, nothing else has changed. This strengthening is more like a passive blessing, stemming from the natural influence of he's unconsciously dissipating power on those close to him. Or perhaps he subconsciously developed a slight fondness for the Huxia Special Forces members, those who had always worshipped him. This slight goodwill earned these Special Forces soldiers such a favor. This conclusion sent a chill down the spines of everyone present. The power of that being does not even require him to actively bestow it. Its mere existence can transform any mortal who approaches it into an extraordinary warrior. What immense power this is. And this, Li Yun pointed to the last report. Our preliminary research on ZW3 Shadow Ore has yielded positive results. She showcased prototypes of several new pieces of equipment. Using these wastes that Longmian has been using, our materials science and energy engineering departments have made groundbreaking progress. The protective lining made from the initially developed shadow powder can effectively deflect low-level, eerie physical attacks and interfere with eerie mental perception. The purified energy dust, used as a trigger for the new type of anti-magic ammunition, gives it a cleansing effect against low-level anomalies. A general in charge of equipment slammed his hand on the table, his voice trembling with excitement. Great stuff, these are priceless treasures. Old Zhang, this means our individual soldier equipment is about to be upgraded. Our soldiers will be more confident when facing strange occurrences in the future. The era of relying on dangerous containment objects to contain the bizarre seems to be over. Zhang Zhengxing nodded slowly, his heart filled with turbulent emotions. They made the pact with the god of Zhongshan with great caution. They even prepared for the potential backlash at any time, which was a helpless move. However, things took a far different turn than initially expected. This evil god did not bring any disaster. Instead, it is like a silent and generous treasure trove, and the echoes that are unconsciously emanating are solidifying the foundation of Huxia civilization in every aspect. He does not need the worship of believers, nor does he care about human awe and fear. Simply by existing and breathing, it has brought about a dramatic change in a nation's extraordinary military strength. This kind of unconscious help is more moving than any deliberate act of charity. This indicates that its power level has reached a point where it can naturally alter the rules of the environment. Daxia happens to be located within this safe zone, enveloped by its power. After the meeting, Zhang Zhengxing stood alone by the window of the command center, gazing in the direction of Zhongshan Mountain. Under the cover of night, that area seemed even more profound than the starry sky. He thought of the team members who sacrificed themselves before the meeting of 10,000 ghosts, and the sense of powerlessness he felt when facing the eerie. Now, the number of bizarre incidents reported from the front lines has decreased by more than 90%, and the surviving team members can finally take turns resting and reuniting with their families. Laughter, a sound rarely heard in the base, could even be heard for the first time in a long time. All these changes stem from the slumbering presence within that mountain. Perhaps. This is the national destiny of our era of Daxia. Zhang Zhengxing muttered to himself, his tone complex, which eventually turned into a long sigh. It contains an indescribable sense of relief and a heavy sense of responsibility. We must maintain a good relationship with the god of Zhongshan. The things from the free country are moving faster. This is the first time the god of Zhongshan has made a formal request to them. They must do it perfectly. This is no longer just about dealing with a crisis. It is a strategic cornerstone concerning the rise and fall of a nation. At the heart of Zhongshan's family estate, Lin Yi was completely unaware of all this and utterly indifferent. He simply felt that the aura of these tiny covenant beings around him seemed a little more solid than before. Unlike before, it is no longer easily blown away by the wind. That's good. A vague thought swept through his vast consciousness. He did not ponder the reasons for this change, he simply felt it was more convenient this way. Just as a person doesn't think about why the ground beneath their feet can bear their weight, as long as it can, that's enough. For him, the transformation of Daxia that occurred because of him was nothing more than a tiny speck of dust, stirred up by an unconscious turning over in his eternal slumber. And this dust falling on the shoulders of Daxia becomes the bedrock supporting the peace and tranquility of the nation. As time went by, the takeout from the free country had been delivered several times already. There are 2 Class S containment objects, 7 Class A containment objects, and dozens of Class B containment objects. With the absorption of these elements, the core of Zhongshan's residential area is no longer what it used to be. From an external perspective, the spatial structure of this area exhibits a distortion and folding that defies Euclidean geometry. The darkness was no longer nothingness, but possessed a velvety texture, with starlight flowing through it, like the veins of a living body. Strange, phosphorescent mosses and crystal clusters form the Earth's foundation, growing and spreading spontaneously according to an aesthetic beyond human comprehension. An indescribable aura permeated the air, a mixture of ozone, old books, and a cold fragrance from the depths of the universe. The rules here are being slowly but surely rewritten. Gravity becomes capricious, the flow of time is sometimes fast and sometimes slow, and in some areas even a conceptual blur appears. Strange creatures of various shapes formed from shadows and starlight. They will move luminous minerals to adorn specific corners and prune those crystal clusters that grow too wildly. They might even gather around certain energy nodes, performing a silent, ritualistic worship. This space is increasingly becoming an independent, miniature living dimension. A kingdom that belongs only to Lin Yi, a kingdom of living. At the absolute center of this divine kingdom, Lin Yi's very existence is the heart and brain of this dimension. He does not manifest in any specific form, or rather, his form is this ever-evolving and expanding kingdom of God itself. His consciousness was like a bottomless ocean, slowly rising and falling, digesting the enormous energy he had previously devoured and integrating the various newly acquired qualities. And those snacks from all over the world with varying quality. This provides a wealth of samples about the rules of this world, life forms, and emotional energy. Although the flavors differ, they greatly enrich his database. The power level silently and imperceptibly underwent a qualitative leap. He could clearly perceive those faint, almost negligible threads of faith in the distance. Most of them came from the chaotic land of North America, the mouth of the abyss cult led by Chen Yan. Their beliefs were fanatical and twisted, mixed with a strong sense of possessiveness and self-sacrifice. Others are scattered throughout Daxia and even around the world. They are scattered individuals who have inadvertently come into contact with the remnants of his power and have developed either worship or fear as a result. These threads of faith, like a spiderweb, converge toward him, attempting to establish a connection, conveying prayers, praise, fear, or distorted interpretations. Lin Yi's attitude towards this remained indifferent. He does not need faith to sustain his existence. The meager energy brought by these threads is, to him now, a drop in the ocean. Ants might go to great lengths to bring you a toffee or a bottle of wheat juice. But ants could never stand up, pick up a spatula, rub wood together to start a fire, and cook you a couple of dishes. Interesting but useless. A thought flashed through my mind. Like dust trying to blend into the mountains. He neither severed these connections nor responded. Let them exist, like observing ants in a glass box, watching them busily and frantically trying to understand their incomprehensible existence. At the same time, the world's attention, the scrutiny, awe, fear, and even deeply hidden hostility from government agencies, secret organizations, and powerful individuals from various countries shrouded Zhongshan. Among these gazes were those yearning for cooperation, those seeking refuge, those plotting in secret, and those simply observing from afar out of fear. Lin Yi could feel these gazes, just as his skin could feel the movement of air. He didn't care. In his perception, these gazes were no different in essence from those threads of faith. They were all instinctive reactions of the weak to the powerful. Noise. His consciousness provided the evaluation. Hopefully the food that follows will be worth this commotion. After completing a new round of integration and refinement, his thinking began to undergo some more ambiguous and more instinctive changes. Hunger remains the core driving force behind his actions, but it is no longer as intense and pure as it was when he first awoke. A more abstract sense of purpose or curiosity began to emerge. What is the true nature of this world? Where do these strange things come from? Is it a distortion